Chapter 204 Glimmer of Dawn. Hearing these 4 words, Chun Hongba couldn't help but be moved. Sanshui Popo's eyes were also filled with astonishment. They could all hear the great ambition contained in Long Haochen's words. Hearing these 4 words, the struggle in Chun Er's eyes also became peaceful. At that time, when Long Haochen mentioned the title of Glimmer of Dawn in front of Chun Zidian, even the members of their own monster hunters only thought of it as a great ambition. They even wanted to use 100 years to accomplish it. However, after a few short years, Long Haochen, who was only 20 years old this year, had already told her that they would soon obtain the title of Glimmer of Dawn. An incomparable sense of glory instantly rose in Chun Er's heart. A gentle, milky, white, spiritual power suddenly emitted from her body. She could feel the spiritual power in the air suddenly explode. In the next moment, Chun unexpectedly recovered her ability to move. She rushed to Long Haochen's side in a big stride. "Leader, is what you said true? Can we really obtain a title?" Chun grabbed Long Haochen's arm and shook it with all her strength, although she didn't attach much importance to external things. However, as a monster hunter, her own monster hunters could obtain a title. This kind of glory was so lofty that even Chun Hongba and Sanshui Popo felt a bit jealous. It should be known that in the 6,000 years of human history, the number of monster hunters that could obtain a title didn't exceed 20. Currently, there were only 2 titled monster hunters. Long Haochen faintly smiled and said, "Although our strength is still far from being able to complement the title of titled monster hunters, we are indeed going to obtain a title of our own." "That's great, that's really great. Leader, no matter what, I want to return to the team. I want to fight together with everyone. I must." As she said this, Chun suddenly turned around and faced Chun Hongba. "Grandpa, you can't stop me. You have no right to stop a demon hunter from returning to his team. Do you know? In the past few years, under the leader's leadership, we have gone through fire and water and made outstanding contributions to the Alliance. In the team, because I couldn't use summoning magic, I was always a burden. However, my companions never expressed any dissatisfaction with me. No matter when, they would always protect me in the safest place. Especially the leader. Every time we encounter a strong enemy, the leader is always at the front, enduring the enemy's strongest attacks. And every time this happened, I could only watch helplessly as everyone fought and killed each other, unable to do anything. Now, I was finally a true summoner. I finally had my own power. How could I leave my team at this time? How could I be so selfish? Grandpa, no one can stop me. Not even you, unless you kill me. Otherwise, no matter what, I must return to the team and be with my companions." Chun Er's words were spoken with sincerity. Tears once again gushed out, but her words were incomparably resolute, leaving no leeway. Sanshui Popo's expression clearly hesitated. She was once a demon hunter, so of course she understood how deep the relationship between a demon hunter and his companions was. That was nurtured through countless life and death situations. That kind of friendship was often more important than family affection. Between them, it was unknown how many times they would go all out in order to rescue each other, even risking their lives. At this moment, Chun Er's words sounded like she was weeping and complaining. For a moment, her heart couldn't help but become chaotic. She looked towards Chun Hongba. Although Chun Hongba was afraid of his wife, he was after all the Soul Temple's temple master. Looking at Long Haochen and his tearful granddaughter, Chun Hongba's expression gradually returned to normal. He sternly said to Long Haochen, "I'm very sorry, Saint Knight Elder. I take back my previous words. I didn't apologize to you for the words I said in a moment of excitement. Congratulations on obtaining the title of Light of Dawn. For many years, no matter which of the 6 great temples, all the professionals have sacrificed themselves for the greater good. I don't know how many parents have seen their children step into the battlefield, but in the end, they only returned with their corpses. Even their corpses weren't complete. As the Soul Temple Master, I understand how glorious it is for to be a demon hunter. I shouldn't have stopped her. Yes, in my heart, I definitely have a selfish motive. I only have this one granddaughter. However, I absolutely didn't stop her from returning to the team because of this selfish motive. Speaking till here, Chun Hongba pointed at the Soul Saint garment on Chun Ing-er's body. Saint Knight Elder, please take a look. The garment that Ing-er is wearing right now is called the Soul Saint garment. It is the only artifact of our Soul Temple. On this artifact, there are 108 elixirs inlaid. They were left behind by 108 rank 9 psychics of our Soul Temple for several thousand years. This Soul Saint garment can be said to have taken the efforts of tens of generations of our Soul Temple to finally complete. From the day it was completed until now, the only one who can wear it is Ing, because her innate internal spiritual energy is over 90. She has the physique of a Soul Saint. She's also a God's favored, just like you. Summoners are different from Unite. No matter how powerful a summoner is, his body is still fragile. Our Soul Temple can't do without Ing-er. Therefore, I can't let her take any more risks. Give her another 10 years, and she will definitely become the true mainstay of our Soul Temple. At that time, on the battlefield against the demons, she will be able to play a much greater role than now. Therefore, as the Soul Temple Master, I have to stop her from returning to the team. I hope you can understand. No, Grandpa, you can't stop me. Leader, quickly teleport me away. If that happens, even Grandpa won't be able to find me. Chun-Ing-er shook Long Haochen's arm, asking him to teleport her to the Tower of Eternity. However, Long Haochen didn't do so because he could understand Chun Hongba's current mood. Wasn't Chun Hongba now just like Yang Haohen and Grandpa Long Tianin when he finished his closed-door training? At that time, Long Haochen had witnessed their struggle. An innate internal spiritual energy of 90 was incomparable to any temple. It meant that an amazing powerhouse, or even a powerhouse that could fight against the Demon Emperor, was about to be born. With such a powerhouse leading, no matter which temple it was bound to be extremely prosperous. As the temple master, it was understandable that Chun Hongba wanted to keep Chun-Ing-er. Moreover, Chun Hongba was right. No matter what, Chun-Ing-er was a summoner, and he and Kai-er were also God's favored. However, their survivability was much stronger than Chun-Ing-er's, especially him, who had the Tower of Eternity and could teleport to another space at any time to avoid the enemy's pursuit. Therefore, in the end, Long Tianin and Sheng Yu were relieved to let them form a new team. Ing-er calmed down. Long Haochen patted Chun-Ing-er's shoulder, and she calmed down. However, the way she looked at Grandpa and Grandma was a little vigilant, which made Chun Hongba angry. However, he was also secretly amazed that this young man, named Long Haochen, was quite capable. He knew his granddaughter's temper better than anyone else. Chun-Ing-er's stubborn personality was very similar to his. If she wasn't really subdued, how could she be so obedient? At least when she was by his side, this precious granddaughter of his was not so easy to talk to. Temple Master Chun, I can understand your concerns. However, Ing-er is a member of our team, and we need her. I can promise you that I will do my best to protect her safety. As a team leader, it is my duty to protect each and every one of my companions. I will do my best to achieve this. As long as I'm still alive, I will not let the enemy hurt her. Chun Hongba's face darkened. So, you think that your strength is enough? Long Haochen said, Temple Master Chun, our team is a whole. At least among monster hunters of the same level, I dare say that our survivability is the strongest. Back then, Senior Chinzidian once gave us an epic tier equipment called the Soul Chain. You should have heard about it from Inga. The Soul Chain has the ability to share life. In other words, it is very difficult for my companions and I to be ambushed and killed by the enemy. We can all share the damage for our companions. Not only that, in our team, almost every member's equipment is at least legendary tier. Currently, we have 2 divine equipment and 4 epic tier equipment. This is not including Ing-er's Soul Saint garment. In terms of self-defense, I am very confident. The 2 divine equipment he was referring to were his Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield and Kai-er's Grim Reaper Scythe. The 4 epic tier equipment were Soul Chain, Eternal Melody, Aria of the Goddess of Light, Blue Rain, and Hibiscus of Light. The Tower of Eternity was not within Long Houchen's calculations. Apart from teleportation, he really did not want to borrow any power from the Tower of Eternity. Eternal Melody was only used as an epic tier equipment for teleportation. 2 divine equipment and 4 epic tier equipment? Chen Hongbao's facial muscles twitched. Are super equipment so worthless? How old are they? For a moment, Chen Hongbao actually did not know how to continue refuting Long Houchen. Sanshui Granny saw her husband's hesitation and said, "Weapons are after all external objects. Only when you are strong enough can you protect yourself." Although Ying has already broken through to the 7th rank, her abilities are still lacking. Leader Long, how about this? We can allow Ying to return to your team. However, you must guarantee that she cannot enter the demons to carry out missions for a certain period of time. It is best if she stays in the Wansho Pass. Participating in the Holy War is also a contribution to the Alliance. No. Without waiting for Long Houchen to speak, Chunning had already resolutely refused. Grandma, we are already legendary tier monster hunters. You no longer have the power to stop us. I must go with Boss and the others. We will definitely carry out missions. Chen Hongbao's eyes flashed, and he said in a deep voice, "Fine. You can go, but you must use your strength to prove to me that you have the ability to protect yourself." Chen Inger was startled. She did not expect her grandfather to agree so readily. "How do you want to prove it?" Chen Hongbao said in a deep voice. "As long as you and your companions can defeat me, I will admit that you have the ability to protect yourself." "That's impossible." Chen Ing immediately understood. Grandfather was trying to save the country in a roundabout way. On the surface, he agreed, but he was using another method to make things difficult for them. Chen Hongbao was also one of the old powerhouses of the Temple League. He was a powerful rank 3 psychic. His internal spiritual energy was as high as 300,000. Of course, for a summoner, spiritual energy was not the absolute deciding factor. This was because the summoner's summons were more important. Spiritual energy was their backup support. Thus, in the Soul Temple, the 6 great temples had the most number of rank 9 powerhouses. However, their overall strength was not the strongest. Summoners usually trained in summoning magic and spiritual energy. They did not have any other skills. Since they focused on spiritual energy, they were naturally stronger in this aspect. To put it simply, if Chen Hongbao with 300,000 spiritual energy went up against Long Tianin with 200,000 spiritual energy, he would definitely lose. However, on the battlefield, facing thousands of enemies, Chen Hongbao was much more useful than Long Tianin. Chen Hongbao blushed and said, "If that's the case, then don't mention leaving again. Do you think I don't know what you're planning? If you return to the team, you will immediately go with them to rescue Yang Wenjiao." Yang Wenjiao? Hearing this name, Long Houchen's heart skipped a beat. During the Monster Hunter's trials, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi were hailed as the 3 greatest hopes of the younger generation of the Knights Templars. However, he had not seen Yang Wenjiao for a long time. Yang Wenjiao was not only Chen Er's fiancé, but also the grandson of the Lord of the Knights Templars, Knight of the Seal Yang Howen. "Inger, what's going on? What happened to Yang Wenjiao?" Long Houchen hurriedly asked Chen Inger. Hearing this question, Chen Er's eyes suddenly turned red again. He was captured by the demons, and we don't know if he's alive or dead. It turned out that the 2 teams of monster hunters commanded by Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, after the Holy War began, entered the demons to fight behind the enemy lines. Among the new generation of monster hunters, they were among the best. Overall, the quality of the team members was not much worse than that of Long Houchen and the others. After the continuous magic power in the war with the demons, their strength had greatly improved. In addition, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi were smart people, meticulous, and capable of commanding. All along, they had been thriving among the demons. They had completed a lot of difficult missions. With the passage of time and the improvement of their actual combat ability, these 2 teams of monster hunters had also become general-level monster hunters after Long Houchen and the others. Although they took different routes, The four teams of monster hunters led by Long Haochen, Lu Shi, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan were now all above the general level. Their monster hunters had been established for less than 5 years, which could be said to be a miracle in the history of monster hunters. However, the two teams of monster hunters commanded by Yang Wenjiao and Duan still had an accident. The Holy War had been going on for almost 2 years, and they had been fighting among the demons. They only returned to the Alliance once a year to replenish their supplies. Not long ago, when they intercepted the demons' transportation team among the demons, their original plan was very thorough, and their tactics were also very complete. Their foolproof mission had met with a Waterloo. The reason was very simple. They were unlucky enough to encounter a demon god. Speaking of which, this also had something to do with Long Haochen. The demon god they encountered was preparing to enter the front lines, and then make a detour to the Exorcist Mountain Pass as reinforcements. During the Holy War, the demons were stationed outside the several major human strongholds, and the overall strength of the 8 demon gods outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass was the weakest. The commander was only the demon god of emotion, Sidi. And when Long Haochen and the others were at the Exorcist Mountain Pass, they had successively helped the Exorcist Mountain Pass kill 2 demon gods, and Sidi himself had also suffered serious injuries. In this kind of situation, the demons naturally paid close attention to the Exorcist Mountain Pass and immediately sent a demon god to follow the transportation team to replenish the strength of the demons in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. And this demon god's ranking was quite high, within the top 24. He was a senior demon's powerhouse. As a result, the two teams of monster hunters commanded by Yang Wenjiao and Duan ran into an iron plate. Although this demon god didn't bring his own demon god pillar, his strength was far from what they could contend against. The final result was tragic. The two teams of monster hunters were almost completely wiped out. Yang Wenjiao and Duan were seriously injured and captured, and the only one who escaped was the assassin of Duan Yi's team. He came back to report the news. The location of the accident was closest to the 10,000 Beast Pass, and after this assassin sent the news back, he died from his heavy injuries. How could Chun-Ying not be anxious after receiving this news? She panicked for a moment, and this news had just arrived yesterday. Originally, Chun Hongba and Sanshui Popo didn't intend to tell this news to Chun-Ying, but she coincidentally discovered it. After listening to Chun-Ying's narration, Long Haochen's complexion immediately became very unsightly. First of all, they were fellow monster hunters, and for the Knights Templars, Yang Wenjiao and Duan were both rare talents. In the future, they were all talented Knight of the Seal, and they were all talented Knight. Since they were captured, no matter what, Long Haochen had to go and rescue them. Even if they might not succeed with their current strength, he still had to try. Yang Haohen's care for him had always been engraved in Long Haochen's heart. If it wasn't for the support of the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, he might have been sent to the Demon Emperor by the Alliance before the start of the Holy War. Taking a deep breath, Long Haochen looked at Chun Hongba and said in a deep voice, "Senior, I agree with your proposal just now. I'm willing to challenge you with my companions. However, I hope that you can relax your conditions a bit. Facing us juniors, can you at least not use your equipment?" Chun Hongba didn't expect that after thinking about it, Long Haochen would actually agree to his clearly bullying test. There was no room for negotiation at the moment. However, he couldn't help but admire Long Haochen in his heart. This young man had decided to lead his team to challenge him, which meant that he had made up his mind to rescue Duan Yi and Yang Wenjiao. If it wasn't for his granddaughter, Chun Hongba couldn't wait for a powerful team of monster hunters to do the same. However, since it involved his granddaughter, how could he let Chun-Ying take the risk? However, he had already said it, and it was impossible to take it back now. As a temple master, how could he go back on his words? "All right, I won't use my equipment to accept your challenge. The time is up to you. It'll be in the Colosseum of my soul temple." Long Haochen nodded slightly and said, "Temple Master Chun, we haven't seen Ying for a long time. Please allow Ying to reunite with us. At the same time, it'll be convenient for us to plan our strategy." "Yes, sure. However, if you want to leave the pass just like that, then you'll be considered unwelcome by the Soul Temple forever. At the same time, I'll activate the power of the temple to stop you. Long Haochen said, "Don't worry, that won't happen." After saying that, he gave Chun Hongba a standard knight salute, put on his mask again, and walked out with Chuninger. Boss, As soon as they walked out, Chuninger grabbed Long Haochen's arm again. She couldn't help but burst into tears again. Long Haochen patted her head. "Silly girl, why are you crying? Do you think the missions we faced before were easy? Even without you, if I knew that Yang Wanzhao and Duan you were captured by the enemy, I would have done my best to rescue them. Calm down first, and we'll take a rest so that we can face your grandfather's test. You're the most familiar with Temple Master Chun, so we need you to explain to us." Yes. Chuning nodded repeatedly. She didn't know why, but after Long Haochen came, the uneasiness and anxiety in her heart had decreased a lot. It was a habit that she had developed when she was with Long Haochen. It seemed that as long as the leader was around, everything would be fine. That sense of security was gradually formed over a long period of time, and it was deeply ingrained in Chuning heart. Long Haochen brought her to the place that the Soul Temple had arranged for them to rest. It was natural for them to reunite with their companions, especially between Chun Ing and Wang Yuan. They were good friends and sisters. When they saw each other again, they screamed excitedly. Everyone couldn't help but feel excited. The joy of reuniting was soon diluted by reality. After she calmed down, Chuninger told them what had happened. After listening to her story, everyone's gaze fell on Long Haochen, waiting for his decision. Long Haochen said, "We have to get past Temple Master Chun. Otherwise, he won't let us take Ing away. Hanyu, I'll have to trouble you to make a trip. Ride the Star King to Southern Guard Pass and find Sima. We have to gather all our strength to win this battle." Hanyu nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go immediately." Long Haochen brought him to an empty space outside and summoned the Star King. After giving him a few instructions, Hanyu rode the Star King and immediately headed south. The distance from Thousand Bees Pass to Southern Guard Pass was not far. Sima Xian had always been the main force of the team. After almost 2 years of training, his cultivation must have improved greatly. With him, Long Haochen's team of Glimmer of Light monster hunters would be reunited, and their strength would be at its peak. In the past, they had always worked together as a team of 7. Without Sima Xian, their overall strength would naturally be weakened. Their morale would be different. Kai was supposed to be the fastest, but after Kai lost her memory, Long Haochen couldn't trust her to look for Sima Xian. Hanyu was steady, and the Star King wouldn't be able to fly at full speed. It was naturally the most suitable choice to let him go. When they returned, the Star King could carry both of them at the same time. Both of them had the light attribute, and they could also use their spiritual energy to help the Star King increase its speed. After Hanyu left, Long Haochen returned to the room and said to Chuninger, "Inger, tell me about your current strength and the various abilities of your ancestor. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle." Chuning looked at Long Haochen worriedly. "Boss, do we really have a chance? Grandfather is too strong, I'm afraid." Long Haochen chuckled and said, "Give yourself some confidence. We aren't weak now. Moreover, only by fighting against stronger experts will we be able to improve even more. Although there's a huge gap between us and Temple Master Chun, I think as long as we do our best and display enough strength, Temple Master Chun won't really make things difficult for us and won't let us leave." Chuning eyes lit up. "That's right. Grandfather is an elder after all. If we can withstand his continuous attacks for a certain period of time, perhaps Grandfather will soften." Lin Xian, who was at the side, chuckled and said, Let's not talk about anything else. When your grandfather's test is about to begin, you must use your words to force him to not use his domain. As long as he doesn't use his domain, we definitely have a fighting chance. Let me tell you, Boss defeated the 49th ranked Demon God of Insight, Crosser, in a one-on-one duel. Previously, we even used the soul enhancement technique to help Haoyue fight against an undead expert with a spiritual energy of over 200,000 during his evolution. If your grandfather doesn't use his equipment, he might not be able to defeat us. Chun-Ing was stunned. So you're saying that, boss, this Holy Knight leader is real? Wang Yuanyuan giggled. Of course it's real. Do you think the leader is bragging? He's the acting Holy Knight leader that was officially appointed by the Knights Templars. I reckon that in a few years, our boss will become a Knight of the Seal. Long Haochen smiled bitterly. Don't be too optimistic. Temple Master Chun has a wealth of battle experience and is much stronger than the opponents we've faced in the past. When we face the demons, at least my light element can restrain their dark element to a certain extent. And when we face the undead creatures from Hao Yue's world, Hao Yue's aura can restrain them. But with Temple Master Chun, we don't have that kind of advantage. Who said we don't? Me? Chun-Ing suddenly jumped up and said proudly, You're a summoner who doesn't know how to summon. Don't tell me you're reliable now. Lin Xin said in surprise. Chun-Ing said unhappily, Don't be so full of yourself, bro. If you're so good, let's fight one-on-one. I'll beat you up so badly you won't be able to find your way north. Do you believe me? As she said that, she waved her little fist at Lin Xin. With her slender arms, it wasn't very convincing, but everyone couldn't help but laugh. The only one who didn't laugh was Long Haochen. He nodded and said, All right, Inger, if possible, find a training field and fight with Lin Xin. I really want to fight. Boss, that's not good. If I turn Madol into a roasted suckling pig, Inger will be heartbroken. Lin Xin laughed. Long Haochen glanced at him and said, Don't be too happy. We haven't seen each other for 2 years, and your cultivation has increased. Don't tell me Inger hasn't. Inger, can you find a suitable training field? Chun-Inger's eyes flickered with a sparkling luster. She glanced at Lin Xin with some ill intentions, nodded and said, Of course I can find it. With bro medicine, I'll let you know how powerful I am. Lin Xin curled up on the sofa, his whole body trembling. He said in a trembling voice, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Unreliable beauty Ying, I forgot to tell you. This magician has already learned offensive magic. It's not just fire spells. Chun-Ing was stunned. You know offensive magic? Didn't you swear not to learn it? Lin Xin jumped up from the sofa. Times have changed. Let's go. Let me see how much you've improved in these 2 years. Madol Piglet should be able to become a magical beast of the 8th rank, or even the 9th rank. It doesn't matter. You're still not my opponent. Chun-Ing curled her lips. Facts speak louder than words. If I don't beat you into a pig's head today, I'll change my surname to yours. Lin Xin grinned. Then what about Yang Wenjiao? When we save him, he'll find out that his wife has changed her surname to someone else. He'll be so sad. Chun-Ing was so angry that she didn't say a word. However, she was in the best mood she had in the past 2 years. She could finally be with her companions again. This feeling was so good. With Chun-Ing's status in the Soul Temple, finding a training field couldn't be any easier. She led everyone to a rather spacious training field behind the Soul Temple. After explaining the situation to the administrator, she temporarily commandeered it. Long Haochen and the others watched from the sidelines. Chun-Ing, and Lin Xin walked into the training field together. After 2 years, Chun-Ing's Madol Piglet had obvious changes. Its body, which was originally more than a foot long, didn't grow bigger. Instead, it had shrunk by about a third. However, it gave everyone a very strange feeling. The piglet's skin had become like jelly. Its entire body gave off a feeling that it was crystal clear, especially its pair of eyes. Its small eyeballs were like 2 resplendent gems. Its body didn't emit any strong aura. However, when it followed beside Chun-Ing, it seemed like a part of Chun-Ing's body. There was a faint and special aura existing. Lin Xin walked to the other side of the training field and said, Ing, do you want me to give you 10 minutes to chant? Sigh. I really can't bear to turn Madol into a roasted pig. As he said that, he rubbed Madol's chubby body a few times. With a smirk, he pinched its little butt. Madol angrily cried out twice and immediately jumped into Chun-Ing's arms. Madol isn't angry. We'll teach him a good lesson later. Chun-Ing calmed down at this time. She wasn't angered by Lin Xian's shameless behavior. The way she looked at him was a little strange. It was like a queen holding a whip and looking at a slave tied to a pillar. Soon, the distance between the two of them increased. Long Haochen stood on the viewing platform in the distance and said loudly, "Both of you be careful. Don't hurt each other. Let's begin." As soon as Long Haochen's voice came out, the distant Lin Xian's temperament immediately underwent a tremendous change. With a boom, a strong blue flame instantly rose around his body, and his originally playful gaze turned chilly. Fighting with the demons and constantly killing them made him accumulate a strong killing intent. As soon as he entered the state of battle, it was as if he had changed into a different person. He raised his fire crystal staff high. He didn't have the slightest intention of being lenient. As soon as he lifted the staff, 6 blue fireballs flew towards Chun Er's direction. Generally speaking, a summoner of the same rank could hardly be a match for a magician. This was because a summoner's summoning magic took a lot longer to chant than a magician's attack magic. This was why Lin Xian said that he wanted to give Chun time to chant magic. Lin Xian's confidence was reasonable. His heart's flame was much stronger than the average fire magician. Moreover, he had strong control over magic and the ability to cast magic instantly. After the string of 6 fireballs flew out, they immediately scattered in the air, bringing with them 6 dazzling trails of blue flames that surrounded Chun from 6 directions. With Lin Xian's control over magic, he was completely confident that he could stop his magic when Chun couldn't resist it. He was indeed very experienced. The more powerful a magician was, the less likely they would use powerful magic. This was because not only would it consume more energy, the chanting time would be longer, and there were more uncertainties. The goal of a powerful magician was to control the battlefield in their own hands. Facing Lin Xian's attack, Chun acted as if she didn't see it at all. She stood in the same place and gently pointed her right hand at Madul Piglet. Suddenly, a strange milky white light shot out from her finger and fell on Madul's body. This milky white light carried a strange, distorted fluctuation. The moment it came into contact with Madul's body suddenly expanded. He turned into a snow-white giant bear that stood up like a human. Roar! The giant bear let out a roar towards the sky. An icy blue halo suddenly burst out from its body. The icy blue halo suddenly expanded and covered the bear, and Chun turned her wrist and took out the crystal ball that she used to use in the past. The sound of chanting could be heard. Poof, 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 poof. A series of explosions were heard. 6 blue flames exploded on the ice shield. A large number of cracks suddenly appeared on the ice shield. However, it was reinforced by the bear's roar again. "You want to block my attack like this? That's too naive." Lin Xian snorted and also chanted a spell. His attack just now was just a test. He wanted to see how Chun would resist it. However, what made him curious was that Madul didn't eat a magical crystal this time. Instead, he did it directly. It seemed that Chun had given him some kind of ability. Moreover, from Chun calm and composed look, Lin Xian faintly felt a sense of urgency. Chapter 205. At this moment, a door of light opened behind Chun. Each door of light was 5 meters high and 3 meters wide. The gorgeous door of light shone with a strange brilliance. There were a total of 6 doors, maintaining an arc behind Chun. Chun-Er's body slowly floated up from the ground. The 108 elixirs on her soul saint garment exuded a faint milky white halo, which made Chun look like a fairy. A powerful spiritual fluctuation suddenly bloomed from her side. The terrifying pressure seemed to make the whole trial field become dignified. It really is a bit interesting. Lin Xian was also taken aback, but his incantation did not slow down at all. At this time, he had already completed it. He pointed the fire crystal staff forward, and a solid blue flame shot out, once again flying towards Chun. After the flame flew out, a strange scene played out. It actually gradually condensed in the air, turning into a big blue, flaming hand. Compared to the previous fireball, The light of this big flaming hand was not particularly strong. There was even no flame rising from the big hand. But the hand itself was dark blue. When he arrived in front of the ice bear's light barrier, he clenched his hand into a fist and punched the ice barrier. With a bang, the ice shield shattered, turning into countless ice fragments that scattered in all directions. The flaming hand opened again, this time to grab the ice bear that Madol had transformed into. Madol roared again. His strong body suddenly rushed forward, and a strong ice spiritual power erupted, like a storm, rushing towards the big flaming hand. At this time, Lin Xion's strong control over magic showed itself. The big flaming hand swayed in the air, suddenly sank down, and then stretched out its middle finger, stabbing towards Madol's body from below the ice storm. In the stands, Wang Yuanyuan snappily said, "Brother Yu Yao is too wretched. He even dares to bully Madol." Long Haochen smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's not certain who will be the bully. Er's beautiful robe wasn't just for show. The only artifact in the Soul Temple wasn't easy to deal with." Madol had trained in the Tower of Eternity. As the giant flaming hand attacked from below, Madol's ice bear body suddenly made a side flip, and then his body size skyrocketed, actually producing a second transformation. This time, Madol still transformed into the ice element magic, the Frost Earth Dragon. Its thick tail swept out and fiercely bombarded the huge flaming hand. The Ice Earth Dragon could be said to be one of the rarest types of Earth Dragons. It was a magical beast of the 8th rank. The most powerful Frost Drake King was even a magical beast of the 9th rank. However, they were not real dragons, so they could never evolve to the 10th level. At this time, the Frost Earth Dragon that Madol had transformed into was more than 10 meters long. Its huge tail was like a giant awl, and its sweep was full of power. It was clearly close to the standard of a magical beast of the 9th rank. Previously, Lin Xion's judgment was correct. Madol's current ultimate transformation was to reach the standard of a magical beast of the 9th rank. The giant flaming hand was blocked again, and Lin Xion's attack was already in full swing. Chun-Er's summoning magic had already made him feel a great threat, and he had to stop her from completing the incantation. Hence, after the flaming hand, balls of solid exploding fireballs flew out one after another, just like on the battlefield, and headed straight for Madol. Madol was indeed strong. Lin Xion's magic control was good, and Madol's resistance was also very strong. The huge body of the Frost Earth Dragon was very flexible under his control. Ice restrains fire. Although Lin Xion's Flame of the Heart was very strong, it would still be restrained by ice. In addition, Madol's spiritual energy seemed to be endless. Not only was his body strong, but he was also constantly releasing ice magic to interfere with Lin Xion's attack. Seeing Madol blocking his offensive magic one after another, the surprise in Lin Xion's eyes became more and more intense. Madol's resistance was very high, and he also had a good grasp of the direction of his magic. No matter how he attacked, no fireball could get past Madol. When he tried to control the fireballs to go around from a distance, he was surprised to find that the light gates were like natural barriers. His fireballs would naturally be extinguished as soon as they got close. Could this be an enhanced version of the Living Soul Gate? Lin Xion's heart suddenly jumped. The Living Soul Gate was a 7th grade summoner's magic, but he had never heard of the ability to summon 6 Living Soul Gates at the same time. Although Lin Xion was just teasing Chun-Inger, he was very shrewd. Chun-Inger's cultivation had also broken through the 7th grade. In other words, she could control the power of the Living Soul Gate. This is not good. Lin Xion was a little hesitant. It wasn't that he thought he would lose, but in this situation, if he didn't use some powerful magic, he was afraid that it would be difficult to interrupt Chun-Inger's magic. However, if he used those powerful magic, would it hurt her? Although he and Chun-Inger quarreled fiercely, how could he hurt his partner for the sake of victory? While Lin Xion was hesitating, on the other side, Chun-Inger had already completed her incantation. The moment she stopped chanting the last syllable of the incantation, A strange layer of milky white sprinkled down from her body. Chun-Inger closed her eyes and slowly raised the crystal ball in her hand above her head. The 6 light gates simultaneously burst forth with intense light, each of them different. Red, blue, yellow, cyan, gold, black. They were actually the colors of the 6 elements. Immediately after, roars sounded from the light gates. Chun-Inger's summoned magical beasts began to appear. When this magic was completed, whether it was Long Haochen and the others who were watching the battle, or Lin Exine, they immediately realized that this was not the Living Soul Gate. The Living Soul Gate was of a nature attribute. Even if this magic could be controlled, it could only control the level of the summoned magical beasts. It could not control the number or attributes of the summoned magical beasts. It was completely determined by one's own cultivation. However, Chun-Inger's summoner clearly knew the attributes of the summoned magical beasts in advance. Therefore, it was definitely not the Living Soul Gate. It was just a magic that looked like the Living Soul Gate. From each light gate, only one magical beast walked out. However, when all of them walked out, Lin Exine took a deep breath and almost shouted out, "I admit defeat." The 6 magical beasts looked exactly the same. They were all earth dragons. Their bodies were comparable to the frost earth dragon that Madol had conjured. Moreover, they each represented 6 different attributes. Did these 6 types of earth dragons really exist in reality? Even if there were earth dragons of the same attribute, it was impossible for them to look exactly the same. In other words, these 6 earth dragons were actually created by Chun-Inger using summoning magic. Lin Exine was a magician. He had heard before that the highest level of a summoner was to summon a magical beast of their own imagination and then use its abilities to the fullest. At this moment, what Chun-Inger had completed seemed to be a similar magic. From the aura of these 6 earth dragons, they should be in the category of level 8 magical beasts. There is still a gap between them and the pinnacle of level 8 magical beasts that Madol had conjured previously. They were only equivalent to the strength of a level 7 human powerhouse. However, Lin Exine himself was also a level 7, although he knew that he was much stronger than an ordinary level 7. Against 6 magical beasts of all 6 elements, his chances of winning were very slim. Moreover, what shocked him even more was that when these 6 earth dragons appeared, they immediately got into formation. They each occupied 6 points, forming a 6-colored magical hexagram. What were they going to do? Were they going to cast a joint spell? Chun-Inger did not continue chanting her incantation. She floated in the air, and her pretty face was full of a smirk. Looking at Lin Exine's appearance, he seemed to be harboring malicious intentions. In a flash, Chun-Inger had already landed in the middle of the 6 earth dragons. She raised her crystal ball up high and murmured something. The 6 earth dragons raised their heads at the same time and breathed out their elemental breath. The 6-colored light gathered above her crystal ball, forming a 6-colored vortex. Lin Exine cried out in pain from afar. "Inger, we're all on the same side. Don't hit my face." At that moment, a 6-colored radiance shot out from Chun-Inger's crystal ball like a bolt of lightning. Lin Exine instinctively released an explosive fireball in an attempt to block it. However, his fireball disintegrated the moment it came into contact with the 6-colored light. It did not even have the chance to explode. The 6-colored light landed directly on Lin Exine's body. If he was not sure that Chun-Inger would not hurt Lin Exine, Long Haochen would have stopped the duel. Lin Tan looked strange after being hit by the 6-colored light. His body glowed with 6 different colors, and his skin could no longer be seen. Only the 6 colors were fluctuating. His body was frozen in place like a statue. "Go back." Chun-Inger waved her hand, and the 6 earth dragons walked back to their respective light doors. The light doors closed, and the spell ended. Chun-Inger pouted at Madol. "How'd he bully you just now? Go and bully him back." Madol grinned, and his body changed again. This time, he turned into a kangaroo-like magical beast and hopped in front of Lin Exine. What is a kangaroo best at? Boxing. As a result, a certain someone who was extremely arrogant before turned into a tragedy. However, Madol did not embarrass Lin Exine. Although he had beaten him up for 5 minutes, he did not hit his face. Otherwise, he would have beaten him into a pig's head, as Chun Inger had said. Ouch, it hurts. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. The six-colored light on Lin Xion's body lasted for a full 10 minutes before it gradually dissipated. Once he regained his mobility, he roared angrily. Chun Inger snorted. Come again if you can't accept it. I specialize in dealing with all kinds of dissatisfaction. Long Houchin chuckled. All right. Stop bickering. Lin Xion lost, but Inger, he didn't use his strongest skill because he was afraid of hurting you. Otherwise, he would have been a threat to you. That summoning spell was created by you, right? I've never heard of it. Chun Inger said proudly. Yes, I created it, inspired by how you as chaos elemental stripping. I can't use that kind of magic. But I thought, can I use summon beasts to complete the combination spell? I experimented many times and finally succeeded. Those earth dragons just now are my first batch of test subjects. They were all created from magic crystals. I could summon them whenever I need them. The reason why it takes a long time to chant is that the earth dragons I created will evolve. Their disadvantage is that they don't have much fighting instinct, but I refined them into puppet-like summoned beasts. Like Madol, as my strength increases, they will continue to evolve. Chun Inger said it very simply, but the others could not help but be shocked when they heard her words. Those were earth dragons with 6 elemental attributes, created with magic crystals and summoning spells. The difficulty could be imagined. In other words, Chun Inger could not only summon beasts, but also create them. I'm a soul saintess. This is the exclusive ability I have after becoming a god's chosen soul bestowal. If I want to, I can even bestow souls on earth and stones. But the number of souls I can bestow is limited. Casting it consumes my own soul power, so I can't use it too much. The advantage is that the summoned beasts that I bestow with souls will definitely evolve along with my cultivation. After listening to her explanation, everyone was slightly stunned. Chun Inger's ability as a soul saintess was slightly difficult to understand. But thinking about it carefully, they could not help but be shocked. Creating beasts and bestowing them with the potential to evolve. Ding! The effect of this ability may not be obvious in the beginning, but as Chun Inger's cultivation level increases, the magical beast she creates will definitely become stronger and stronger. When she reaches the 9th rank, won't she have a batch of powerful beasts that she can directly use without consuming spiritual power to summon? Moreover, because these beasts were created according to Chun Inger's ideas, the degree of compatibility between them and Chun Inger's control over them were far beyond that of ordinary summoned beasts. 6 magical beasts of the same attributes. Mixed magic as a soul saintess, Chun Inger had undoubtedly far surpassed the scope of ordinary summoners. Long Houchin pondered for a moment and said, Inger, can I understand it this way? Your ability as a soul saintess is equivalent to giving you an additional batch of summoned beasts. Chun Inger giggled and said, more or less. I've only awakened for a short period of time, so I'm not proficient in using this ability yet. Using soul bestowal, I can at most control these 6 beasts. Long Houchin said, when you summon them, the chanting speed is a little slow. If this problem can be solved, it will be even more ideal. Also, what if they die in battle? Can you resurrect them? Moreover, even if they are resurrected, can they continue to have the ability to evolve and not evolve again? Long Houchin's question could be said to hit the nail on the head. Although Chun Inger's ability was strong, if it was limited by these aspects, it would require a lot of support in order to be effective in battle. Chun Inger thought for a moment and said, the chanting time is not a problem. I have a way to shorten the chanting time. Moreover, these little dragons were created by me not too long ago, so their compatibility needs to be further improved. As they evolve and their compatibility with me increases, the chanting speed will sharply decrease. While I'm strong enough in the future, if I want to summon them, it will really be like summoning Madol. However, they really can't die. If they die, then all the previous efforts will be in vain. They can only start all over again. Of course, the creatures that I bestow with my soul, whether or not they were created by me, after being bestowed with the ability will be related to my ability at that time. In other words, the stronger I am, the stronger the beast that I bestow with my soul will be. Long Haochen smiled faintly and said, "Then you have to work hard. I feel that this ability of yours still has a lot of potential to develop. In the future, it will definitely be more useful than what you see now." Chen Inger said with some pride, "That's for sure. They will definitely be a useful member of our Light of Dawn monster hunters." Long Haochen said, "Since we've come to this training field, let's practice our tactics so that we can take your grandfather's test tomorrow." Although the teammates in the team had absolute trust in each other, and they also had a tacit understanding that had been cultivated in the past. Although the teammates in the team had absolute trust in each other and had developed a tacit understanding from before, after 2 years of training, everyone's strength had increased to different degrees. Moreover, with the addition of Zhang Fangfang, they still needed to practice with each other in order to display their strongest strength. "Yes." Chen Inger nodded, and the proud smile on her pretty face disappeared. A faint trace of sadness quietly flashed in her eyes. Long Haochen was very observant. Seeing this, he comforted her and said, "Don't worry, the heavens will help the worthy. They will be fine." Chen Inger flattened her red lips and said, "But they have been captured for so long. Will they really be fine?" Lin Xin came over and said, "Haven't you always been against Yang Wenjiao? Why is he more anxious than anyone else after being captured?" Surprisingly, Chen Inger did not argue with him. She raised her head slightly and looked into the distance, murmuring, "I've known him since I was very young. He was a few years older than me. At that time, we were living in the holy city and could see each other often. I called a brother Wenjiao, and he called me Inger. When not cultivating, he would always bring me out to play and eat delicious food. If anyone dared to bully me, he would always stand up for me and beat the other party until they looked like pigs. He treated me better than my own brother. I was still young then, so I said, 'Brother Wenjiao, I will marry you when I grow up.' He said, 'Okay, then I will wait for you to grow up.' Who knew that the adults would hear us children's words? Brother Wenjiao's grandfather then proposed to my grandfather. My grandfather was also very happy and agreed, and so we got married. Later, as I grew older, the time I spent cultivating increased, and the opportunities for us to meet became less and less. He became more and more stable, and also more and more powerful, while I, because of my own reasons, could not even use a summoning spell. At that time, my grandfather also did not tell me the secret of the Soul Saintess. I always thought that I would not be able to become a powerful summoner, so I felt especially inferior. Once, he brought me out to play, and we met a few fellows from the warrior temple who spoke rudely. At that time, we were still very young. Although Brother Wenjiao's strength was already very good, he still could not defeat those few youths who were much older than us. In the end, he was beaten up. At that time, I saw the deep unwillingness in his eyes. At that time, I was still young, so I said, "Brother Wenjiao, don't be sad. Wait for me to grow up. I will definitely protect you." At that time, he turned his head and looked at me with a very strange expression. I will never forget that look of contempt. I asked him, "Why are you looking at me like that?" He said, "You can't possibly protect me. Only I can protect you. Although I lost today, I will definitely not lose in the future." I asked him, "Why can't I protect him?" He just smiled and did not say anything. It was at that time that I was very, very sad. Perhaps you guys think that it is nothing, but to me, it was an extremely heavy blow. Apart from my family, he was the closest person to me and the person I care about the most. And that was also the moment when I felt the most inferior. His contempt, his wordless mockery pierced me to the core. From then on, I never ignored him. After listening to Chen Inger's story, the crowd could not help but feel a bit of pity. As the granddaughter of the Lord of the Soul Temple, Chen Inger could not even use a summoning spell. One could imagine the pressure she was under. Perhaps what Yang Wenjiao did was nothing, and he did not have any evil intentions, but in that kind of situation at that kind of time, his behavior caused great harm to Chen Inger. Lin Xin said, "Hurt my pride? Then, since you ignored him, why are you still so anxious now?" Chen Inger said unhappily, "Do you think everyone is as heartless as you? I ignored him but it does not mean that I do not have him in my heart. I have always been paying attention to his situation, and I swore that, unless one day I could defeat him, I will not marry him, and let him wait until his hair turns white. Humph humph. Lin Exion's body trembled. A woman's anger is really scary. But I reckon that he may not be able to defeat you now. Chen Inger's eyes turned red, and she said tearfully, but I don't even know whether he is still alive or not. What difference does it make if I could defeat him or not? Wang Yuanyuan said, Silly girl, you are really stubborn. Just such a small matter, and you bear a grudge for so long. No wonder you ignored him, and even refused to join his monster hunters. You are really good. Don't worry, we will do our best to find him, and fulfill your wish of defeating him. Chininger choked with sobs. I don't want to defeat him now. As long as he is still alive, I will forgive him, and I will not bear a grudge anymore. But I don't even know where he is now. Is he still alive? Long Haochen hesitated for a moment, then said, Inger, is there anyone from Yuyi Chamber of Commerce in Wanshou Pass? Hearing his question, Chen Inger's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes. We can ask them for clues. Yuyi Chamber of Commerce has them, and they are now the largest free merchants. I will go find them now. Saying this, she was about to run out. Long Haochen hurriedly pulled her back, saying, Inger, don't lose your sense of propriety. How about this? We first practice our tactics, then I will accompany you to Yuyi Chamber of Commerce. With the token Yuyi gave me, I should be able to get their help. We need to at least know the current situation of Yangwan Zhao and Duan Yi before we move. At the same time, while waiting for news, we can pass your grandfather's test. By the way, before you and Lin Exine fought just now, you said that you have a way to restrain your grandfather's domain? Chun Inger nodded, saying, Almost all of us summoners' domains exist to strengthen our summoned beasts. Almost all high-level summoners have their own original summoned beasts. Therefore, the enhancement of the domain is either to strengthen the original summoned beast to the highest strength, or to strengthen all the summoned beasts. My grandfather's domain is the former, mainly to strengthen his original summoned beast. There is another way to use my soul bestowal, and that is to use it on hostile magical beasts. It will produce a strong weakening effect in a short period of time, making it easier for me to subdue them. Grandfather's strength is much stronger than mine. Even with the Soul Saint garment, I can't weaken his original summoned beast too much, but I can greatly offset the enhancement of the domain. Long Haochen suddenly said, So that's how it is. The ability of your Soul Saintess is really practical. Chun Inger said, We summoners believe in the Beast God. Legend has it that the rank of the Beast God can't be compared to the Elemental God, so it is very difficult for a miracle to happen. The Soul Saintess is a magical beast guide sent to the human world by the Beast God. So basically, the ability of the Soul Saintess is directly aimed at magical beasts. With our current cultivation, the enhancement is very good, but if we become stronger, the enhancement will not be as obvious as it is now. Wang Yuanyuan asked curiously, Inga, what is your grandfather's original summoned beast? I feel that with a little traitor like you, our chances of winning are very high. Chen Inger snorted and said, How can it be so easy? My grandfather is the person who understands magical beasts the best in the world. As a psychic, I have never seen his limits. Think about it. It has been so long since the start of the Holy War, and our myriad beast pass is impregnable. The number of beasts we summon is even greater than the demons. Even the 8 demon gods outside couldn't force Grandfather to use his strongest power, so it will be very difficult for us to defeat him. We can only do our best to stall for time. The biggest weakness of us summoners is that our ability to kill in one blow is very weak. As long as we can stall for enough time, it will be enough to prove to Grandfather that we have enough strength. I will do my best to stall Grandfather's summoned beast. Sister Xingxuan likes me the most, so she won't be ruthless. Sister Xingxuan, Lin Xian asked doubtfully, Is your grandfather's summoned beast a humanoid magical beast? Chun Inger smiled mysteriously and said, Of course not. But Sister Xingxuan is a girl. You can't hurt her when the time comes. Let me tell you, the next day, early in the morning, Long Haochen and the others came to the Soul Temple and looked up at the sky, waiting quietly. According to the time, they should be back by now, Long Haochen murmured. They were all waiting for Han Yu and Sima Xian to return. Long Haochen had a good understanding of Star King's flying speed. The distance from the 10,000 Beast Pass to the Southern Pass was not far, and it had already been a day and a night. If Han Yu could successfully pick up Sima Xian, he should be back by now. Yesterday, Chen Inger and her grandfather had agreed to have a match at noon today. Based on her understanding of grandfather, Chen Hongba had a strong sense of time. If they were late, grandfather's impression of them would be greatly reduced, and the test would be more difficult. If not for the fact that they were pressed for time to rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, they could have calmly waited for Sima Xian and Han Yu to return and then calmly made arrangements. But time waits for no man. If they set off later, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi would be in greater danger. Long Haochen had already contacted the Yuyi Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce had agreed to help them investigate Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi's situation. The Yuyi Chamber of Commerce had its own communication method, and it should not take long for them to receive news. At the same time, Long Haochen also heard from the Yuyi Chamber of Commerce that after Abao led the demons to besiege them, Yi immediately proposed to cancel the engagement when she returned to the demons. Even the Moon Demon couldn't change her mind. Her reason was very simple. How could a man who would try to kill her, who valued his enemy more than himself, become her husband? Perhaps, as the crown prince of the demons, Abao was right, but Yi was not willing to marry such a husband, even if she had to be killed. Regarding this matter, the demon emperor did not express his opinion, and even Abao was silent. After all, there was a reason for this, and Abao was not in the right. Therefore, in the end, although the engagement was not canceled, it was delayed indefinitely. It was said that Abao had gone into seclusion again. He was training with all his might to improve his strength. This news was just an interlude, so Long Haochen did not pay much attention to it. However, he did not know that because of this matter, Abao's hatred towards him had increased. As the crown prince of the heaven-defying Demon Dragon clan, Abao had put in even more effort than Long Haochen. In the near future, Abao, who was like a fated opponent, would definitely try his best to find Long Haochen's whereabouts after he came out of seclusion. If he doesn't come back soon, we won't have time to rest. Chen Inger was also very anxious. If Sima Xian and Han Yu could rush back at this time, they could still rest and, at the same time, have time to discuss strategies and tactics. However, as time ticked by, they were still nowhere to be seen. Long Haochen took a deep breath, turned to his companions and said, "Everyone, be prepared to fight against Temple Master Chun without the two of them. This assessment cannot be delayed, and we must persevere." Yes, everyone nodded at the same time, including Zhang Fangfang. After becoming a member of the Light of Dawn, Zhang Fangfang consciously set his position. The position he gave himself was very simple, Wang Yuan subordinate. Usually, he would not make any suggestions or opinions, and would do whatever Long Haochen told him to. Moreover, he was in a good mood recently. Ever since Long Haochen brought Kai and the others to meet up with Wang Yuan seemed to have been reborn. She was full of energy, and even her attitude towards him was much better. It could be said that she had officially acknowledged their relationship. To Zhang Fangfang, the death of his original Monster Hunter's companions was a huge blow to him. Now that he could integrate into Wang Yuan's Monster Hunters, it was like his wish had been fulfilled, and he could also accompany Wang Yuan. He was very satisfied. At this moment, suddenly, Long Haochen raised his eyebrows and turned to look at the distant sky. The sky was empty, and there were no clouds in the blue sky. Just as everyone was wondering what Long Haochen was looking at, a small golden dot appeared in the distant sky, and it was enlarging in everyone's eyes at an alarming speed. Wasn't it the return of the Star King? There were two people sitting on the broad back of the Star King. The one in front was Han Yu, but he could not block the imposing figure behind him. A big bald head appeared from the back of Han Yu's head, shining under the sun. It was no weaker than the light emitted by the Star King. "They're here. They're here. They're really here." Lin Xin jumped up excitedly. The return of Sima Xian meant that all the members of the General Class Monster Hunt 64 had finally reunited. It also meant that the monster hunters were all complete. Only then would they be the true light of dawn monster hunters. Even if one person was missing, it would not be complete. In the past, Lin Xin would often quarrel with Sima Xian, but in reality, the two of them were very close. When he saw the bald man again, Lin Xin could not suppress the emotions in his heart. He could not help but jump up and down and wave at the sky. Long Haochen's handsome face was also slightly red from excitement. He clenched his fists tightly. They're back. Sima and Hanyu are back. We're finally one again. At this moment, he felt that no matter what difficulties they faced, they would definitely break through. The Star King's speed was too fast. In order to rush back in time, he had been flying at full speed. As a result, when it landed on the ground, even with its cultivation, it staggered, and a faint golden mist of steam rose from its body. Sima Xian was the first to jump down from the Star King's back. He laughed heartily and rushed towards everyone with his arms wide open. Hanyu followed closely behind. At this moment, all the members of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt squad were extremely excited. Except for Kair, who was slightly emotional, the others could not help but rush forward in cheers and hug each other tightly. They were reunited. They were finally reunited. Whether it was the General Grade number 64 or the Light of Dawn, they were finally whole again. Zhang Fangfang stood at the side and looked at them. His eyes were filled with deep envy. Recalling his comrades who died in battle, he could not help but tear up. For the Alliance, for mankind, countless demon hunters had fallen on the battlefield with the demons. It had been 6,000 years. When would mankind be able to truly drive away the demons? Lin Xin punched Sima Xian hard. Why are you guys so slow? We were so anxious. Before Sima Xian could speak, Hanyu could not help but say, Slow? This is slow? The Star King is about to be exhausted. The Star King has been flying at full speed. He has reached his limit. If you want to say it's slow, it's Sima's problem. It's not like you guys don't know how much this guy weighs. If it was a normal flight, the Star King can easily carry the two of us. But in the case of rapid flight, with his increased weight, his speed will naturally be affected. Chapter 206. Hanyu placed a hand on Sima Xian's shoulder and continued. Also, on the way back, Sima has been chattering nonstop, asking this and that. The Star King is already very resilient not to be annoyed to death by him. Hearing him say this, everyone burst into laughter. Long Haochen walked to the Star King's side and placed a hand on its back, injecting a rich light element into the exhausted Star King's body. It's been hard on you, Star King. The Star King lifted its head slightly, rubbing its horn against Long Haochen's hand as it looked at him with a warm gaze. Ever since it followed Long Haochen, the Star King had definitely gained more than it had given. It truly admired Long Haochen from the bottom of its heart. It was now completely certain that if it continued to stay by Long Haochen's side, under the influence of the pure light element, it would definitely evolve into a holy unicorn. A faint light flickered, and Long Haochen's eyes revealed a warm smile. You rest first. The Star King nodded, and with a flash of light, it turned into a ray of starlight and disappeared. Didn't you say you wanted to test us? Where do we start? Let's go, I'm coming. Sima Xian shouted loudly. The thick fighting spirit that emanated from his body made everyone's blood boil. Lin Xin laughed heartily. You're still the same? You haven't changed at all. The competition starts at noon. Why are you in such a hurry? Don't letting Er's grandfather slap you to death when the time comes. Sima Xian snorted. There's Brother Yao. If you're not convinced, let's have a match first. Let me tell you, I've already broken through to level 7, level 3. What about you? Don't tell me you haven't broken through yet. Lin Xin said disdainfully. Only level 3? You still have a nerve to show off? I'm already level 5 of level 7. In terms of talent, you're still lacking. You're already level 5? I don't believe you. Sima Xian was unconvinced. Long Haochen laughed and said, Everyone is finally reunited. Before the competition starts, let's familiarize ourselves with each other's cultivation. It was also more convenient for them to work together. Just tell me your level. Lin Xin and Sima Xian had already spoken. Han Yu said, I'm also at the 7th level, 5th level. All along, his cultivation had been second only to Long Haochen and Kair. However, Lin Xin was stimulated by Lin Xin in addition to his own strong innate talent and the attraction of the heart of flame towards the fire element, which was why he was able to catch up. I'm also at 7th order level 5. This time, it was Wang Yuan who spoke. Her cultivation base, which was originally lagging behind, had been completely raised during the desperate slaughter. Hearing them report their levels one by one, Sima Xian couldn't help but widen his eyes. It can't be, I'm the weakest now. Inger, what about you? He naturally wouldn't place his hopes on Long Haochen and Kai, being weaker than him. When Channing heard his question, she immediately frowned. Baldy, what do you mean, what? Do you think I'm definitely weaker than you? Let me tell you, I'm also at 7th order level 4, just a little stronger than you. Moreover, I just beat up Brother Yu Yao. If you're not convinced, you can also try. Although she said so, her eyes were full of smiles. Sima Xian's face was gloomy as he said, No way. I've already worked very hard. Don't be like this. I don't want to be last. Lin Xin pretended to comfort him and said, All right, don't be depressed. Ordinary people can't be compared to geniuses. Don't tell me you still don't understand this logic. Uft. Levels don't mean everything. Leader, Deputy Leader, what about you guys? Kair said, I'm at 7th order level 6 now. Her speed of spiritual power wasn't faster than her companions, mainly because of the impact of losing her memory. As a god's oracle, she could have improved faster, but in the past 2 years, she had spent most of her time recovering her previous abilities under the guidance of the Holy Moon, especially her understanding of the assassin's abilities. It could be said that the current Kai had a feeling of being well prepared. It was equivalent to learning the assassin's abilities again. Moreover, there was something suppressed in her heart. If she couldn't recover her memory, it would affect her future training even more. On the other hand, if she could recover her memory, then she would definitely have an explosive growth. Long Haochen said, I didn't calculate my level because I haven't evaluated my spiritual power for a long time. My current spiritual power should be around 40,000, less than 50,000. It seemed to be around the 3rd level of the 8th grade. I'll test it when I have time in the future. When the words 8th order level 3 came out, everyone's eyes were a little dazed. Although they also knew that Long Haochen, who was wearing the golden foundation armor, must have broken through 8th order. For what he said, his internal spiritual power was clearly close to 50,000. This gap was too big. Apart from him, the strongest among them, Kair's spiritual power was currently less than 20,000. In other words, Long Haochen's spiritual power alone was equivalent to 2 or 3 of them combined. Moreover, this couldn't be calculated with simple addition and subtraction. Perhaps, if they joined forces, they could defeat Long Haochen, but if Long Haochen wanted to withdraw from the battle, they might not be able to stop him. Sima Xian listened to Long Haochen's words. The gloominess on his face was swept away. Haha, although my spiritual power is the weakest, the gap between everyone and boss is so big, I'm mentally balanced. But boss, can you not be like this? You will hurt our confidence. Long Haochen chuckled. Actually, my spiritual power now isn't completely self-cultivated. A lot of it is due to luck. In reality, it was like this after he broke through to 8th order not long ago. His spiritual power increased so quickly, other than his own talent and the opening of many spiritual apertures. More importantly, when the Tower of Eternity swallowed Samakina's domain, it gave him feedback, and later when Hao Yue evolved, it gave him a boost. Almost 10,000 spiritual power was obtained this way. Chuninger said, Boss, I saw that Star King was very tired just now. Will he be able to participate later? Long Haochen shook his head. Star King won't be participating later. As a knight, I can't bring my 2 mounts to participate. Chuninger's sparkling eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise. You mean you want Hao Yue to participate? Long Haochen nodded. After listening to you talk about your grandfather's summoned beast, I have a feeling that Hao Yue will have a certain restraining effect on it. Moreover, there is nothing to hide in front of your grandfather. Didn't Temple Master Chun promise us that there will be no spectators other than your grandmother and Brother Zhang? In order to truly gain Chun Hongba's approval, after discussing with Zhang Fangfang, Long Haochen decided not to let him participate in this battle. Otherwise, it would seem a little too stingy. Long Haochen and the other monster hunters already had Han Yu as their retainer knight, but if Zhang Fangfang was added, it would become 3 knight, which was a little too many. Long Haochen said with a straight face, "After we pass this test, we will have a good chat about what happened in the past 2 years. Now, everyone, cultivate yourself so that we can maintain our best condition for Temple Master Chen's test." Yes, everyone simultaneously puffed out their chests and replied loudly. 2 hours later, Wanshou Pass, Seoul Temple Coliseum. The so-called Coliseum was actually a name for the trial grounds. Moreover, it would only appear in the Seoul Temple. Because the people in the Seoul Temple were all summoners, during the process of the trial, there would often be situations where the summoned beasts went out of control. Therefore, the trial grounds here were obviously different from the other major temples. First, it was the size of the trial grounds. The Colosseum in the Seoul Temple was almost the largest trial grounds other than the Sanctuary Alliance's trial grounds. The entire Colosseum was circular, and it was surrounded by high platforms that were 10 feet high. The stands surrounded the periphery. The walls of the high platforms were all protected by magical arrays. It was completely targeted at demonic beasts. As long as it was a demonic beast that entered the Colosseum, unless it was released by the staff, it would not be able to rush out. It was the same even for a level 10 demonic beast, which was equivalent to a level 9 human powerhouse. From this, it could be seen how shocking the defense of the Colosseum was. Chun Hongba naturally had a reason for choosing this place to test Long Haochen and the rest. If it was a smaller trial ground, he was afraid that there would be danger. Only the defense here could allow him to unleash his full strength, and there would be no leakage of spiritual energy. There were only 2 entrances in the Colosseum, and they stood opposite each other. At this moment, the entrances on both sides were open. From the eastern entrance, Chun Hongba slowly walked in. Today, he was wearing a white summoner's robe, and he looked refreshed. Due to the words of Long Haochen and the rest that day, Chun Hongba had already promised them that he would not use any equipment in today's test. However, he insisted on using his domain. Although he was the Seoul Temple Master, Chun Hongba did not underestimate Long Haochen and the rest. On the contrary, he almost treated Long Haochen and the rest as equals. Although these children were young, they had created miracles more than once, especially Long Haochen. He was able to make the entire alliance go to war with the demon race for him. It could be seen how important he was to the Temple Alliance. At such a young age, he had already assumed the heavy responsibility of being the acting holy knight of the Knights Templars. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Moreover, he had personally admitted that he had killed 3 demon gods and defeated the snake demon god Andamari's demon god pillar. Was this something an ordinary person could do? Moreover, in Long Haochen's team, Long Haochen was not the only genius. Take his own granddaughter, for example. Chuning, Er's blessed body had awakened, and she had officially become the Soul Saint. As the messenger of the beast deity, one could imagine how much she could restrain summoners. If he still did not use his domain, he might really fail in the hands of these little fellows. He could not afford to lose face. Moreover, Chun Hongba's main purpose was to stop Chuning from taking risks. He also believed that if other temple masters were here, they would also stop them if they heard that they were going deep into the demon's territory. Therefore, Chun Hongba was prepared to teach these young people a lesson today so that they would be able to settle down and cultivate properly. He was not prepared to show any mercy, and he was determined to defeat Long Haochen and the rest and make Chuning stay. As for Yang Wenjiao's safety, he could only wait for the Alliance to send experts to rescue him. Compared to his granddaughter, his grandson-in-law's position was much lower in his heart. At this moment, just opposite Chun Hongba, at the entrance of the Great Beast Fighting Arena on the west side, with Long Haochen in the lead, the Glimmer of Dawn Monster Hunters group of 7 slowly walked in. They were not late at all. On the Great Beast Fighting Arena's viewing platform, Sanshui Popo was already sitting there calmly. She understood her husband's strength very well, and she did not think that these little fellows who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth had any chance. Zhang Fangfang sat beside Sanshui Popo, his eyes focused on the situation below. Although he did not think that Long Haochen and the rest had a chance, he was still secretly praying in his heart, hoping that they could persevere for a while longer. A faint light flickered, and Long Haochen's eyes revealed a strong luster. "Is everyone ready?" Han Yu took the lead to take a step forward. "Leader, Guardian Knight Han Yu reporting for duty." Sima Xian followed closely behind. "Leader, Disciplinary Priest Sima Xian reporting for duty." Next was Lin Xin. "Leader, Fire Mage Lin Xin reporting for duty." Chen Ying. "Leader, Summoner Chen Ying reporting for duty." Wang Yuan forcefully knocked on the armor on her body. At this moment, her eyes were already slightly red. "Leader, Warrior Wang Yuan reporting for duty." The last one was Kaya. Even though she had lost her memories of the past, she could still hear her companions calling her captain loudly one after another. She only felt that the originally ice-cold blood in her body was about to boil. She loudly said, "Leader, Assassin Kai Air reporting for duty." "Good, let's accept the test." Long Haochen used a sonorous and forceful voice to respond to his companions. At the same time, he extended his right hand. One hand after another was placed on top of each other. When the 7 people and 7 hands were all stacked on top of each other, an intense belief mixed with a monstrous fighting spirit instantly burst forth in the Colosseum. One could faintly feel that the bodies of Long Haochen and the rest were emitting a layer of faint golden light. This was the light that originated from the soul chains. When the 7 of them were of one mind, the effect of the soul chains would definitely be released to its greatest extent. Not only did they share their lives, but they also faintly felt a kind of telepathic connection between them. In the past 2 years, their strength had increased, and at the same time, their ability to use their equipment had also improved. At this moment, when all of them stood together and looked at each other's persistent eyes, every member of the bright glimmer of Dawn Monster Hunters had already forgotten who their opponents were. Right now, there was only one belief in their hearts. No matter how strong their enemies were, they would never be able to stop them from advancing. Chen Hongba, who was standing opposite them, felt it the most. When Long Haochen led his companions into the Colosseum, Chen Hongba faintly sensed the solemn aura that was released from their bodies. The calmness that didn't match their age at all had already surprised the temple master of the Soul Temple. However, what happened next made Chen Hongba unable to suppress his astonishment, and his eyes were filled with deep admiration. The members of the bright glimmer of Dawn Monster Hunters expressed their determination by saying that they were reporting to Long Haochen. Every time one more person spoke, their overall momentum would increase by a notch. When all 7 of them had finished, the entire team's imposing manner had already become one. The powerful pressure mixed with dense killing intent and tyrannical fighting spirit had already raised their spirit, chi, and spirit to the extreme. Under these circumstances, they would definitely be able to erupt with 120% of their respective strength on the battlefield. No wonder Long Haochen was so confident. No wonder they were able to kill a few demon gods in succession and obtain the title of Bright Glimmer of Dawn. This was indeed reasonable. At this moment, Chen Hongba even somewhat doubted whether his decision was wrong. He saw with his own eyes the change in Chen Ying-er's eyes when she was together with her companions. They were filled with vitality and were filled with persistence and vitality. This was something that would never appear during her usual cultivation. At this moment, Chen Ying was no longer like a child, but a demon hunter who was truly fighting against the demons. Even Chen Hongba felt that he didn't recognize her. In the stands, Sanshui Popo also revealed an expression of shock. These children are really outstanding. They can actually use this kind of method to raise their morale. Zhang Fangfang faintly smiled and said, "Senior, their excellence isn't limited to just this. You'll be able to personally witness it very soon. I have confidence in them. Captain Long would never do something he wasn't sure of." Sanshui Popo somewhat doubtfully said, "Don't tell me you think they can defeat my family's old man. Do you know my old man's strength?" Zhang Fong shook his head and said, "I don't know what level Palace Head Chen's strength has reached, but I can be sure that Long Haochen and the others won't easily lose this competition. This is Long Haochen's promise to Lady Ying, as well as their entire team's promise. I believe their strength will definitely rise under Long Haochen's command." Sanshui Popo calmly smiled and said, "Good, then let us wait and see." Now, even she was somewhat looking forward to this competition. She also wanted to see how big of a surprise these children could bring, and what kind of miracles they could display. Chun Hongbao waved his hand, and no one knew what mechanism he triggered, but the two doors of the Colosseum simultaneously closed. Suddenly, the entire great beast fighting arena was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Long Haochen led his companions forward and respectfully said, "Greetings, Palace Head Chun. I'm very honored to accept your test." Chun Hongbao indifferently said, "No need to be honored. This was originally a deal. As long as you can defeat me, whatever Ing decides in the future will be up to her. Conversely, I hope you won't give me any trouble in the future. Do you understand?" Long Haochen faintly nodded. "Senior, can we begin?" Chun Hongbao said, "According to the agreement, I won't use any equipment in this test. However, you must be careful. I will use all my strength, and definitely won't be lenient, just because you are young." "Good. Senior, please." Chun Hongbao calmly smiled and said, "You go ahead." While speaking, a peculiar temperament was already released from his body. As the Soul Temple Lord, a psychic, even if he was a summoner, he still wouldn't take the initiative to attack. "Senior, please advise us." Long Haochen loudly shouted. His right foot quickly stepped forward, the tip of his foot pushed off the ground, and his figure dashed forward. Just when Chun Hongbao thought he was going to launch an attack with speed, he stopped after dashing forward for 5 meters. The companions beside him also quickly responded and got into formation. Long Haochen was in front. In his left hand was the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, and in his right hand was the Aria of the Goddess of Light, which was also shining with an orange radiance. Slightly behind him on his left was Wang Yuan, who was holding the Divine Soul Shield and Bloody Storm in her hands. On his right was Sima Xian, who was holding the huge metal ball, Vigorous Ball of Light. The three of them were like a barrier, blocking their teammates behind them. Lin Xian was behind Long Haochen, holding the fire crystal staff in his hand, and the fire dragon wings on his back were stretched out. Behind them was the reincarnation saint, Chun Inger. Han Yu was still at the back, his evil eye lord floating behind his head, its huge eyes wide open, and its surroundings emitted slightly distorted spiritual waves. As for Kai she quietly disappeared into the air the moment their figures changed positions. Invisibility. The diamond-shaped battle formation, which integrated attack and defense, and the invisible assassin, was undoubtedly the best formation for monster hunters. They also perfectly used the advantage of having an extra guardian knight, as compared to ordinary monster hunters. Chun Hongbao couldn't help but secretly nod when he saw this. These young people didn't immediately launch a surprise attack just because he was a summoner. Instead, they were very stable in their formation. This calmness was beyond their age. In fact, Chun Hongbao was already prepared for the attack of the assassin or the knight. The first to attack was naturally the team's main attacker, the mage. Lin Xian raised the fire crystal staff high, and a blue explosive fireball flew toward Chun Hongbao. Even though Chun Hongbao was extremely powerful, he was still shocked when he saw the blue fireball all of a sudden. It was obvious that this thing was not formed by ordinary flames. From the distortion of the air around the flame, its high temperature could be seen. Buzz! The air around Chun Hongbao produced a slight buzzing sound. Then 6 crystal balls appeared around his body at the same time. His whole body was shrouded in a layer of strange white light. This was not a weapon or equipment, but an entity condensed by spiritual power. In other words, this was the reflection of a rank 9 powerhouses elixir. Mages and close combat powerhouses were completely different when they used their spiritual power at the same 9th grade professions. After mages condensed their elixir, they used it to enhance their magic, making their magic more powerful and consuming less spiritual power. On the other hand, close combat powerhouses used elixirs to condense the Ling Gang and control the Ling Gang, which was much better than a rank 8 powerhouse's use of the Ling Gang. Long Haochen could also reach the level of a rank 9 powerhouse in a short period of time through some enhancements, but he didn't have elixirs. This was the gap between him and a true rank 9 powerhouse. Back when he killed the demon god of Insight Crossell, there was a certain element of luck involved. Crossell didn't have a domain, and demon gods only had magic crystals and no elixirs. Moreover, Crossell's combat power was far less powerful than his insight ability. If it was a demon god who focused on combat, it would be very difficult for Long Haochen to defeat him alone. In this battle, Chun Hongba had displayed the power of his elixirs. It was obvious that he didn't underestimate Long Haochen and the others at all, and had used his full strength right from the start. The soft white light made Chun Hongba's body look like he was in a door of light. Lin Xian's fireball was already in front of Chun Hongba. Chun Hongba pointed with his right hand, and a ball of soft white light floated out. One of the 6 elixirs around him emitted a soft halo, and a strange-looking rabbit-like demonic beast suddenly appeared out of thin air and bit the fireball. Strangely enough, even with the high temperature of the heart flame and its larger body, it didn't explode when it collided with the rabbit-shaped demonic beast. Instead, it disappeared in astonishing speed. The rabbit-shaped demonic beast's stomach instantly swelled up. When it landed on the ground, it spat out a mouthful of flames at Long Haochen and the others. What demonic beast was this? Not to mention Long Haochen, even Chun Inger was stunned. She didn't know this kind of rabbit either. The battle had already begun, and both sides had launched an all-out attack. Chun Hongba's incantation rang out immediately. What was even more strange was that the 6 elixir images around him produced a strange echo as he chanted. It sounded as if 7 people were chanting at the same rhythm. Long Haochen raised the divine snail shield of sun and moon in his left hand in front of him, blocking the heart's flame that the rabbit had spat back. In his right hand, the aria of the goddess of light condensed slightly, and he made a flicking motion while sticking close to the ground. Suddenly, a reddish-gold blade of light with incomparably sharp sword intent shot towards Chun Hongba in the distance. One had to know that there was a distance of nearly 100 meters between him and Chun Hongba. Launching the light, severing sword from such a distance seemed to be impossible to hit Chun Hongba's body. However, Chun Hongba's feeling was different. When Long Haochen slashed out with his sword, he felt that his body had been locked in place. Although the light severing sword was extremely far away, the sharpness brought by the sharp sword intent directly stimulated his chanting speed, causing him to be slightly affected. What a strong sword intent. Chun Hongba's pupils shrank slightly. He had to admit that these young people really brought him a lot of joy. At the same time that Long Haochen launched his attack, he also led his team to rush toward Chun Hongba. No matter when, the most effective way to fight against a mage in close combat was to close the distance between the two sides. However, not everyone rushed toward Chun Hongba. Han Yu, Lin Xian, and Chun Inger stayed behind. Chun Inger had already begun to chant while sitting cross-legged on the ground. Both of her hands were holding a crystal ball. Her eyes were filled with concentration and determination. Lin Xian was also chanting, but unlike Chun Inger's concentration, during the chanting process, Lin Xian's feet were constantly moving. Every time he stepped on the ground, he would leave a footprint of blue flames. These residual flames began to emit intense spiritual energy fluctuations, increasing his own spiritual energy output. Han Yu stood in front of them, the scarlet berserk sword in his hand pointed diagonally to the ground, and the shield in front of his chest. One after another, low-level light amplification magic spread out from his body. As a guardian knight, Han Yu's brilliance had always been overshadowed by Long Haochen. However, that didn't mean that he wasn't strong enough. On the contrary, if he was in another team, with his current strength, he definitely had the qualifications to be the leader of a king-class monster hunters. His aura skills were released extremely quickly, and they weren't released in an area. Instead, they were cast at a fixed location. Each aura landed on a single person. The amplification effect was at least double that of an area halo. Moreover, this amplification effect wouldn't weaken the further away the target was from him. Long Haochen's speed was the fastest. The moment he launched his attack, he had already used light speed flash. The 4 huge spiritual wings on his back unfurled, and with a fierce flap, he crossed the distance of 100 meters in an instant and arrived in front of Chen Hongba. Unexpectedly, he had caught up to the light, severing sword that he had sent out earlier. The aria of the goddess of light swayed on the light blade of the light, severing sword, and the blade of light was absorbed back into the divine sword. Then, the seemingly slow sword slashed towards Chen Hongba. Chen Hongba's chanting didn't stop at all. The moment Long Haochen arrived in front of him, the 6 spiritual pills around him all shone brightly and shattered at the same time, turning into 6 halos that fell on the ground in front of him. With a roar that was bordering on madness, the 6 huge silhouettes were like 6 mountains that completely blocked Chen Hongba's body. They were actually 6 magical beasts that looked like gorillas. Every gorilla was more than 3 meters tall, and their eyes were blood red, filled with tyrannical, killing intent. The first gorilla pounced directly at Long Haochen. With an angry roar, a strong yellow light was released from the 6 gorillas at the same time. Long Haochen only felt his body sink, and he, who was charging at high speed, was unexpectedly pulled down to the ground. Gravity spell. He was very familiar with this earth element magic. The 9th Holy Guard was proficient in this type of magic. The 6 gorillas in front of him were all earth element magical beasts, and they all instantly cast the gravity spell at the same time. Moreover, the 6 of them actually had a stacking effect. There was no time to judge how strong these magical beasts were. Long Haochen still slashed out with the aria of the goddess of light. There was no ear-piercing howl, only a golden red light flashed, and the gorilla that was pouncing towards Long Haochen almost instantly stopped in midair. Following that, a golden red light extended from the top of its head to its crotch, and blood splattered everywhere as it fell to the ground. The powerful gravity spell could restrict Long Haochen's lightspeed flash, and with 6 gravity spells stacking together, even a Type 9 powerhouse would be slowed down. However, the gravity spell was unable to slow down Long Haochen's sword intent. That sword intent that had already reached the level of the illuminated sword heart, coupled with the aria of the goddess of light. How could it be so easily blocked? The battle truly began at this time. The other 5 gorillas also made their move, 2 of them pouncing towards Wang Yuan and Sima Xian, while the other 3 pounced towards Long Haochen. The gorillas cooperated very well. Of the 3 gorillas that pounced towards Long Haochen, 2 of them directly pounced towards him, while the other one pounded its thick chest, raised its arms, and an intense yellow light blossomed on its palms. A huge rock with a diameter of a meter, formed completely from energy, was directly thrown towards Long Haochen. Long Haochen, who had entered a state of battle, gave off a completely different feeling. His gaze was calm and cold, and his whole body emitted an unstoppable sharpness. He put away the sun-moon divine snail shield, and blue rain and hibiscus of light with a jade-like luster appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, Long Haochen's body spun rapidly on the spot. 2 vortexes of red and green instantly appeared on the battlefield. The terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations also contained a tyrannical and unparalleled suction force. Whether it was the huge rock that was thrown at him or the other 2 gorillas that pounced on him, they were almost all drawn into this vortex in an instant. In the midst of the screams, the 2 gorillas disappeared. The entire vortex only lasted for less than 2 seconds before it suddenly stopped. A red and green intersected, overlapping into a dark blue cross light in the sky, shot out like lightning, and went straight towards the last gorilla. There was no suspense. How could this kind of level 8 earth magical beast resist the combined attack of the 2 magic swords? The 3rd gorilla was instantly smashed into pieces, and the dark blue light blade went straight towards Chun Hongba, who was retreating. The blade storm was followed by the cross slash. In the short period of the blade storm, Long Haochen did not hesitate to consume a lot of his own spiritual energy to display the Lingang, urging the two magic swords to launch the cross slash. Hao Yue's evolution helped him to further improve his spiritual energy, and at the same time, it also greatly enhanced Long Haochen's external spiritual energy. In the process of controlling the Lingang, his body suffered much less backlash. Therefore, even without the help of Hao Yue's transformation armor, he could now inject the Lingang into the two magic swords. Of course, this also consumed a lot of his spiritual energy. The reason why Long Haochen chose to launch an all-out attack at the beginning was naturally because he had a purpose. He believed that with Chun Hongba's status, he would definitely look down on them. But as the battle continued, this contempt would not last long. He wanted to grasp Chun Hongba's mentality and use the most powerful attack at the beginning to gain the upper hand. As it turned out, Long Haochen's guess was completely correct. Although Chun Hongba had already thought highly of these young people, he was, after all, the temple master of the Soul Temple. In his opinion, no matter how strong these young people were, they were still juniors. It was true that he fought with all his strength, but he did not think that Long Haochen and the others could really threaten him. Until the dark blue light appeared in his field of vision, Chun Hongba really understood that these young people indeed had enough combat power to threaten his life. Taking a deep breath, Chun Hongba shouted in a low voice, and a layer of strong black light suddenly rose from under him. After this layer of black light appeared, it immediately spread and turned into a dark purple halo. Then, 4 rays of light shot out at the same time, merged into one in the air, and bombarded the dark blue light emitted by Long Haochen. Chapter 207. Amidst the violent explosion, Long Haochen's body shook violently, and he couldn't continue his pursuit. Wang Yuan and Sima Xian had already dealt with the guerrillas on both sides. However, they were also affected by the huge recoil and stopped in their tracks. The 3 of them gasped at the same time. Apart from shock, their expressions became even more solemn. Chun Hongba's body had already disappeared after the deep purple light appeared. The deep purple light had also completely unfurled, and the Lord of the Soul Temple was currently at the top of the deep purple light. It wasn't some kind of energy, but a powerful magical beast. The moment this magical beast appeared, the aura in the entire arena trembled. The magical beast was over 40 meters long and had a huge pair of wings spread out on its back. Its entire body was covered in deep purple scales, and its figure was slender and majestic. It also carried an incomparable domineering aura and dragon's might. There were actually 4 heads at the front of its neck, and they were all dragon heads. The color of each dragon head's eyes was different. They were green, red, yellow, and blue respectively. Long Haochen couldn't help but have an extremely peculiar feeling when he saw this magical beast. Didn't this magical beast look a little like an enlarged version of Hao Yue? It only had 4 heads, but its aura and cultivation were much stronger than Hao Yue's. Without a doubt, this was a level 10 magical beast. Furthermore, it was a level 10 magical beast with 4 attributes. This was the Soul Temple's lord, Chun Hongba's natal beast, a 4-headed chimera. Chimeras were a type of dragon, and could also be called subdragons. However, that referred to the most ordinary 2-headed chimeras. If a chimera could cultivate its 3rd head, then it would have the same strength as a true dragon. As for the 4-headed chimera, it was an ancient magical beast. It was definitely a level 10 existence, and a peak level 10 at that. Of course, the 4-headed chimeras had different attributes. Chun Hongba's 4-headed chimera had 4 elements. Among the 4-headed chimeras, it wasn't the strongest in terms of attributes. However, it shouldn't be forgotten that the 4 elements had a very strong enhancement effect. Although it didn't have powerful attributes like light and darkness, there was no doubt that this 4-headed chimera was powerful. It also had a nice name, Starjade. Chun Inger had already told her companions about the strength of her grandfather's four-headed chimera in detail before the start of the competition. Among the known level 10 magical beasts, Chen Hongbao's four-headed chimera could definitely be ranked in the top 10. It was much stronger than the forest boa king that Long Haochen and the others had encountered. Even the Soray king was no match for it in terms of overall strength. Chun Hongbao sat on the neck of the four-headed chimera, but his expression was clearly somewhat ugly. He did not expect that Long Haochen and the others would be able to force him to summon his natal summon in such a short time. Of course, they had to regain their dignity. The deep chanting continued, and the four-headed chimera unceremoniously launched an attack on Long Haochen's group. The huge tail swept out with the force of a landslide and a tsunami, heading straight for Long Haochen, Wang Yuan, and Sima Xian. The strength of the aura and the ferocity of the power caused the three to be overwhelmed with shock. Their spiritual wings flapped at the same time, and the three immediately flew up without hesitation. Clash head-on, dream on. Even Sima Xian, who had the most confidence in his own strength, would not do such a foolish thing. That was a level 10 magical beast, and it relied on its body to make a living. The huge tail was almost 20 meters long, and the tip was covered with sharp spikes that looked like sharp blades. If one was swept by it, even if they did not die, they would at least have a layer of skin peeled off. At this point in time, the battle had already entered a white-hot state. Just as Long Haochen's group flew up, the four-headed chimera's four large heads simultaneously spat out breaths, and the four elemental breaths swept towards Long Haochen's group like a storm. The terrifying spiritual undulations caused the arena to tremble. It was not the first time that Long Haochen faced a level 9 powerhouse. Facing such a situation, he did not show the slightest bit of cowardice. His body in midair, he did not retreat but advanced instead. The four wings on his back flapped, and the cross-shaped slash was unleashed once again. Amidst the ear-piercing, tearing sound, that smear of deep blue appeared in midair once again, and actually forcefully tore apart the four-headed chimera's breath from the center. Wang Yuan and Sima Xian had already taken the opportunity to hide behind Long Haochen's back. They also retreated quickly. Only Long Haochen was left in midair to block the attack. A golden light flashed, and Yu Ting appeared behind Long Haochen at this moment. Immediately after, a platinum-like radiance landed on Chun Hongbao, who was chanting an incantation. Chun Hongbao only felt an indescribable force suddenly appear, and even with his spiritual cultivation, he was unable to stabilize his body and was pulled straight towards Long Haochen. Traction, an evolved version of traction. Back then, even the Lich King had suffered greatly from this move of Long Haochen's. Previously, when he launched an attack, he did not hesitate to expend all his spiritual energy to attack, not only to seize the initiative, but also to close the distance between him and Chen Hongbao. His evolved version of traction was simply too useful against a sorcerer. How fragile a sorcerer's body was. Once he got close, haha. Don't forget, Chun Hongbao had promised not to use any weapons or equipment. As expected, Chun Hongbao was shocked to be hit by Long Haochen's traction. However, in the next moment, the one to suffer was not him, but Long Haochen. A violent sound of spiritual energy clashing could be heard, and Long Haochen was sent flying in response. The glaring jade-green and red-gold light brought about two rays of eerie light in the air. That's right, Chun Hongbao was indeed successfully drawn by Long Haochen, but don't forget, he still had a natal summoned beast by his side. Being able to raise the cultivation level of a natal summoned beast to level 10 was not as simple as helping him in battle. Seeing that Chun Hongbao was about to enter Long Haochen's attack range, the huge four-headed chimera suddenly released a ray of purple light that shone on Chun Hongbao's body. In an instant, a layer of purple light appeared on Chun Hongbao's body, and when he collided with Long Haochen, he was sent flying. Once the distance between them was more than 100 meters, the traction ability was naturally dispelled. The four-headed chimera did not hesitate to spit out its breath again. This time, The 4 elemental breaths merged into one in the air, turning into a tyrannical elemental storm that headed straight for Long Houchin and the rest. This was the full-force attack of a level 10 magical beast. Gather. Although Long Houchin was sent flying, he was not severely injured. As he shouted, his companions had already gathered. Long Houchin descended from the sky, and a layer of 7-colored golden light blossomed in front of him. The divine weapon Sun Moon, divine snail shield, shield wall, and divine block. Boom! An incomparably strong impact appeared in the bestial battle arena, and the surrounding high walls could not help but tremble violently. All the defensive spell formations on the high walls were activated at the same time, and the terrifying spiritual undulations reached their peak at this moment. Chen Hongba only felt cold sweat trickling down his back. He was really close just now. If not for the 4-headed chimera's quick reaction, he would have really entered Long Houchin's attack range. Even though he was a level 9 powerhouse, he was still a wizard. If he had really been struck by Long Houchin's sword, he would not have been able to withstand it either. He could clearly feel the terrifying sword intent contained in Long Houchin's 2 swords. He actually had such a powerful pulling ability. Chen Hongba was slightly panting, and his gaze towards Long Houchin and the rest became filled with vigilance. From this moment onwards, he would no longer underestimate Long Houchin and the rest. Furthermore, although it seemed like Long Houchin and the rest were at a disadvantage, in reality, Chen Hongba was not feeling good either. With the protection of the 4-headed chimera, he was confident that he would not be attacked by Long Houchin and the rest, so he was reciting his incantation with all his might. However, under the pull of Long Houchin, his incantation was immediately interrupted, and the effects of the spell's backlash were not pleasant. If not for his strong cultivation, he would have vomited blood just now. A faint light circulated in the air, and the elemental storm could only sweep past the Sun Moon divine snail shield from both sides. This kind of omnidirectional, large-scale attack was the least effective against the Sun Moon divine snail shield. As a result, even though Long Houchin's spiritual power was rapidly decreasing, he and his companions were still as steady as MT Tai. At this time, Chun Ing-er's incantation was completed. A scene that caused people to feel deeply terrified appeared. Light gates brimming with life energy opened behind Chun Ing-er's back. These light gates were lined up in a row, and the instant the spell was completed, the light gates seemed to line up from one side of the Colosseum to the other. A total of 18 light gates appeared in front of Chun Hongba. This is the Living Soul Gate. Chun Hongba and Sanshui Popo on the viewing platform widened their eyes. They were all powerful summoners and naturally knew how to use the Living Soul Gate. With Chun Hongba's cultivation, he could even use 6 Living Soul Gates at the same time to summon a beast tide to deal with the demons. After Chun Ing awakened as a Soul Saintess, although her cultivation was still far from enough, the Living Soul Gate skill that she had learned since childhood had evolved, and she could use 6 at the same time. But now, what was going on with these 18? In all of the records of the Soul Temple, there had never been a summoner who could use 18 Living Soul Gates at the same time. Such a frightening scene. After completing this spell, Chun Ing appeared to be very tired. She sat cross-legged and muttered something. The 108 spirit dawn on her soul saint garment suddenly lit up, quickly replenishing her consumption. The greatest use of the soul saint garment was to replenish spiritual power. Its formidable effect was something that Long Houchin's Gold Foundation battle armor couldn't compare to. Each spirit Dan meant a replenishment of 10,000 spiritual power. In other words, the Soul Saint garment on Chun Ing-er's body could provide her with at least 1,080,000 spiritual power. Of course, this was also limited. No matter how much spiritual power she could provide, the amount of spiritual power she could use at the same time was only her own cultivation. In other words, although Chun Ing-er was only a 7th-rank summoner, she could use 7th-rank summoner magic almost limitlessly. Of course, this was only in theory. Using magic didn't only require spiritual power, it also required mental power. Just now, When Shaninga used so many living soul gates, her spiritual power could support it without any problem, but her mental power was greatly consumed. She had no choice but to concentrate and rest. At least in this battle, it would be very difficult for her to continue using summoning magic. Those were 18 living soul gates. Moreover, with Chun Hongba and Sanshui Popo's abilities, they could naturally see that this wasn't an illusion. Each living soul gate was real. Since when did this last hide so much from him? Could it be that the Soul Saintess ability was really so frightening? They naturally didn't know that Channing, or being able to use 18 living soul gates, really didn't have much to do with the Soul Saintess. This ability originated from her spiritual stove synthesis. Time stacking. At that time, in the Dream Temple, Long Haochen's group of 7, including Zhang Fangfang, apart from Wang Yuan, had all completed spiritual stove synthesis. What was a spiritual stove? It was a treasure of heaven and earth. Just obtaining one was a dream come true for any profession. But Long Haochen and the others had all completed spiritual stove synthesis. When Chening Er's spiritual stove had just completed spiritual stove synthesis, it wasn't very powerful in many people's eyes. However, as her cultivation increased, the power of her time stacking spiritual stove also became more and more tyrannical. 3 times the magic casting ability. Although it could only be used once a day, one could imagine how terrifying this explosive power was. Low growls and roars sounded from the 18 living soul gates at almost the same time. Magical beasts started to jump out of the living soul gates one after another and pounced towards the 4-headed chimera and Chun Hongba. It had to be said that the quality of Chan Ing Er's living soul gates wasn't much different from before. The magical beasts that were summoned were still of different levels. There were level 2 and level 3 ones, and there were even level 7 and level 8 ones. The strongest magical beast was only a level 8 magical beast with the same cultivation as her. However, the current living spirit gate was also different from before. It was truly a living spirit gate. They didn't just summon one magical beast and end it. Seemingly endless magical beasts frantically rushed out of the living soul gates. In just a few breaths' time, half of the Colosseum was covered by these magical beasts. This time, even Chun Hongba's expression changed. He was a human, not a god. He was all too familiar with the living soul gates. A summoner could continuously summon magical beasts for 10 minutes after using the living soul gates. The level of the summoned magical beasts was directly proportional to the summoner's cultivation. It must not be forgotten that Channing was the reincarnation saintess. All of her summoning spells had an additional effect. This living soul gate could last for twice the amount of time. The area of the Colosseum was very limited, and there was also a flight restriction spell. It was impossible to fly too high. Under such circumstances, if Chun Hongba allowed Chun Ing to fully unleash the power of the living soul gates, there would be no place for them to step in this space. Chun Hongba didn't dare to hold back anymore. His eyes flickered, and he clasped his hands in front of him. His fingers formed a strange hand shape, and he roared something in a low voice. Suddenly, a strong soul storm bloomed from his body, and a milky white halo formed a huge dragon's head behind him. Then, it let out a tyrannical dragon's roar. This milky white dragon's head was so huge that even the huge body of the 4-headed chimera was engulfed by it. With this roar, the milky white light swept out like a monstrous wave. The magical beasts that were charging at the front of the 18 living soul gates immediately stopped when they came into contact with this terrifying white wave. They prostrated on the ground and didn't dare to get up. When this white wave hit the 18 living soul gates, the living soul gates also stopped and no longer released magical beasts. Beast Emperor Domain. It was the Beast Emperor Domain that could suppress or amplify all magical beasts. Among the domains that a summoner could cultivate, this Beast Emperor Domain was definitely second to none. After being stimulated by the domain, the 4-headed chimera's already huge body doubled in size. The terrifying aura made Long Haochen and the rest feel suffocated. This was Chun Hongba's true strength as the Soul Temple's temple master. Even though the only summoned beast that belonged to him on the battlefield was the four-headed chimera, at this moment, the battlefield completely belonged to him. Within the Beast Emperor domain, he was like the master of tens of thousands of beasts. After being covered by the Beast Emperor domain for a long time, even a magical beast that rushed out of the living soul gates would be controlled by him. Do you want to continue? Chun Hongba asked coldly. He didn't order the four-headed chimera to continue attacking, as he couldn't hurt the young people in front of him. In his opinion, such a powerful aura was enough to make these young people admit defeat. Of course we have to continue. Chun Inga, who was concentrating her mental strength with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes and her body floated up from the ground. At this moment, her body released a layer of strange radiance. It was white, but it was a transparent white color. The 100 beast patterns on the soul saint garment seemed to have come to life, and they moved rhythmically in the white halo. The 108 elixir pills all released dazzling radiance. She had used the stacked spiritual cauldron of time to summon the 18 living soul gates in order to force her grandfather to release the Beast Emperor domain. In their strategic plan, it was her mission to destroy the Beast King's domain. In order to rescue Yang Wenjiao, she had already gathered her companions to face her grandfather's challenge together. How could she not bear more? She was the only one who was most familiar with Chun Hongba's strength and the power of his powerful domain. After exhaling a long breath, Chun Ing-er's hands rapidly made 3 movements, and her eyes became a terrifying milky white. A white ball of light gradually formed in her palms, and she shouted, "Soul, give!" The white ball of light shot out and landed directly on the crystal ball that was floating with her. In an instant, the entire crystal ball turned into a milky white color. In the next moment, a milky white beam of light shot out in a straight line, heading straight for the core of the Beast Emperor domain that Chun Hongba had released, the huge dragon head. It was strange that even the powerful four-headed chimera didn't dare to block this tiny white beam of light. In an instant, this white beam of light landed on the dragon head of the Beast Emperor domain. A strange scene appeared. The huge dragon head that was spewing out the domain was stimulated by this white beam of light, and it actually trembled violently. Chun Hongba was shocked. He suddenly realized that he was actually unable to control the domain. If he didn't retract the domain, his Beast Emperor domain might actually collapse at any time. A domain was not like spiritual power, which could be recovered after it was used up. Once the domain was broken, it would be a fatal blow to the caster. Was the necromancer demon, god, Samakina strong? His necromancer domain had been devoured by the Tower of Eternity, and it immediately suffered heavy damage. Not daring to delay, Chun Hongba quickly chanted an incantation and retracted his Beast Emperor domain. The milky white light in the sky instantly rolled back, and the huge dragon head gradually shrank. Without the enhancement of the domain, the four-headed chimera's expanded body shrank again, and the magical beasts on the ground also started to attack again. However, after Chun Ing-er released that white beam of light, her crystal ball also made a crisp ding sound and broke. She directly fell from the sky. She had overexerted her mental strength and fainted. The 18 living soul gates had lost their masters, and they had also completed their respective missions. One by one, they disappeared into thin air. However, in that short period of time, at least 100 magical beasts had launched an attack on the four-headed chimera and Chun Hongba. In a flash, Han Yu caught Chun Ing-er, who was falling from the sky, and placed her on the ground. Speaking of which, Chun Ing-er was able to break grandfather's domain. It was inextricably linked. That's right, Chun Hongba's Beast Emperor domain was already extremely powerful among summoners. But one must not forget whose power Chun Ing-er inherited as the Soul Maiden. That was the power of the Beast God. How could the Beast Emperor compare to the Beast God? Hence, when she activated the Soul Bestowal skill, it was equivalent to releasing the power of the Beast God. Even the Beast Emperor would tremble in fear. Hence, in front of Chun Ing-er, Chun Hongbao's domain was indeed useless. It was Chun Hongbao who told Chuning that the soul bestowal skill could possibly suppress her domain. At this moment, Chun Hongbao really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Since her domain was suppressed, it was obviously impossible to win quickly. Long Haochen's team was equivalent to sacrificing the combat power of a grade 7 summoner to exhaust Chun Hongbao's most powerful domain ability. It was definitely a huge profit. Long Haochen didn't rush to attack. The attacks of the 100 beasts were quite fierce, but they couldn't coordinate with them. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Chuning. His right hand released a golden light, and he had already sent Chuning to the Tower of Eternity without any worries. At this moment, Lin Xan, who had been chanting since Chuning started chanting the Living Soul Gate incantation, finally completed his incantation. A blue spot of light appeared on the fire crystal staff, and immediately after, this spot of light began to continuously brighten. Lin Xian's entire body was surrounded by a liquid-like blue halo. Behind him, a figure that was only 1 meter tall, but full of majesty floated there. The fire crystal staff pointed forward, pointing in the direction of the four-headed chimera, and a blue light that looked only as thick as a thumb instantly shot out. This blue light didn't feel like spiritual power, but more like a physical object. Wherever the light passed, the air seemed to clearly become fresher, as if all the impurities in the Colosseum were instantly purified. Fire God's Finger, a powerful grade 8 fire attribute single target attack spell. Among all the grade 8 fire attribute spells, Fire God's Finger was also ranked among the best. Not only did it require the support of sufficient spiritual power, but also strong control to be able to use this spell perfectly. This was because this spell itself required extremely high control. After the incantation was completed, the fire element had to be compressed to the extreme. If one's control wasn't good, it would backfire on the user, and they might have to bear the power themselves. The fact that Lin Xian dared to use such a difficult grade 8 spell with only a grade 7 cultivation showed his confidence. At this moment, if Chuning was still clear-headed, she would understand that Lin Xian felt wronged after losing to her that day wasn't without reason. How could he use such a powerful attack spell against his own comrade? The blue light flickered and instantly crossed the vast sky. The four-headed chimera's eyes simultaneously revealed a trace of disdain, and the dragon head with the fiery red eyes suddenly lowered its head, and a blazing breath spewed out. The condensed breath spun in a spiral shape in the air, looking like a rapidly spinning flame spear. It collided head-on with Fire God's Finger. Lin Xian used the heart's flame to use Fire God's Finger and naturally displayed the power of this spell to the extreme. It was even close to the level of a grade 9 fire attribute spell. However, the other party's four-headed chimera was a genuine grade 9 powerhouse. Would he be able to succeed this time? The instant the blue flames and red flames came into contact, an extremely strange scene occurred. The red flames were actually penetrated just like that, and one could clearly see that from within the red flames, a dark shadow rapidly tunneled in and headed straight for the four-headed chimera's main body. Of course, Lin Xian's abilities couldn't be compared to the four-headed chimera's. However, although the four-headed chimera was a grade 10 magical beast, its power was divided among its 4 heads, and its strongest point was that it could use all 4 elements at the same time. Furthermore, it was a powerful magical beast that fused magic and martial arts, and its pure magical power wasn't at the level of a grade 9 spellcaster. Faced with Lin Xian's attack that had been prepared for such a long time, it looked like it was about to suffer a huge loss. The collision of spells was extremely fast, and even if the other 3 heads of the four-headed chimera wanted to help, it was already too late. Of course, Lin Xian's attack was still greatly weakened by its breath, and the damage caused would definitely not be too serious. However, as a summoner, the natal summoned beast was almost like another life for them. So how could Chun Hongbao just watch as his companion was injured? With the point of his right hand, another spiritual pill mirror flew out and directly drilled into the chimera's flames, blocking the power of the fire god's finger. The blue flames that were much smaller than before immediately flew out diagonally, following the guidance of the spiritual pill mirror, and flew towards Chun Hongba. The chimera's crisis was resolved. Chun Hongba didn't care about the blue light at all. There was a layer of distorted undulations around his body. The blue light hit the distorted light curtain and instantly dissipated. A summoner's body was even more fragile than a spellcaster's, because they could use fewer defensive spells. So how could Chun Hongba not pay attention to his own safety? He still hadn't forgotten about the assassin that disappeared. Hence, he had been maintaining a comprehensive defense. The defensive spell that he was using now was called Soul Protection, and it was a powerful defensive spell that combined spiritual energy and mental strength. Its defensive power was extremely shocking. Although it wasn't at the level of a grade 9, it wasn't far from it. More importantly, this spell consumed very little spiritual energy, so it could be maintained for a long time. Just when Chun Hongba thought that the power of the fire god's finger had ended, the blue light suddenly dissipated, and a greenish-black light flashed and disappeared. It forcefully drilled a hole the size of the tip of a needle on the soul protection barrier and directly stabbed towards Chun Hongba. Not good. Chun Hongba was shocked. At this critical moment, he couldn't care less about his appearance. His body suddenly fell back. A blazing heat filled with a dark aura almost flew past his scalp, scorching a piece of hair. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been injured. The greenish-black light was like a flame needle, extremely insidiously hidden within the fire god's finger. Only when the power of the fire god's finger was exhausted did the flame needle drill out. Not only was its penetrative power extremely strong, but it was also silent. If it wasn't for the soul protection blocking it and buying time for Chun Hongba, he would have suffered a big loss. Although with his spiritual energy cultivation, he wouldn't be killed by this attack, but being attacked by this flame needle filled with dark aura wouldn't feel good. Lin Exen stomped his foot in the distance, unwillingly saying, "What a pity." Chun Hongba was forced into such a difficult situation. Long Haochen and the others were also shocked, and couldn't help but look at Lin Exen in a new light. Just now, how was that a single spell? It was clearly a mixture of two spells. Where did that greenish-black flame needle come from? They also didn't know. The fire god's finger itself was a spell cast by a rank above, and he was actually able to hide another spell within it. It was clear to see how much control Lin Exen had over fire magic. Just a little bit more. Of course, the person Lin Exen originally wanted to plot against naturally wasn't Chun Hongba, but Qining Er's grandfather. He was targeting the four-headed chimera. Coincidentally, he was lured over by Chun Hongba and almost suffered a great loss. "Brother Yu Yao, what spell is that?" Sima Xian asked in surprise. Lin Exen chuckled and said, "Fire God's finger and Hellfire Needle, isn't it fierce?" Fierce. Sima Xian was not stingy with his praise and gave him a thumbs up. Conjoined spirit enhancement. Long Haochen shouted, and just as Lin Exen's Fire God's finger produced a stunning effect, Long Haochen also summoned Haiyue. His shout was immediately understood by everyone, and other than Kai, who was still hiding in the dark, everyone else jumped onto Haiyue's back. Where did Lin Exen's Hellfire Needle come from? Long Haochen also pondered for a while before remembering. Previously, when they were in Illusory Paradise, they had killed a demon god's inheritor and obtained a legacy crown that shone with greenish-black flames. At that time, they had given it to Lin Exen. He was a fire element magician, so he might be able to fuse with it. After that, everyone had long forgotten about the existence of this legacy crown. Now, it seemed that Lin Exen did not fuse it with his own spiritual power. After all, the legacy crown had a dense aura of darkness. If it were to be fused with his heart's flame, it would most likely have the opposite effect. In reality, Lin Exen had refined the legacy crown into a special spell that was hidden in his body. The special flame of the legacy crown could recover on its own, and it was an extremely pure, corrosive flame. Lin Exen's body's maximum endurance was to withstand 3 hellfire needles. After continuous tempering and upgrading with his heart's flame, the power of this hellfire needle was already no lower than a level 8 spell. This was his trump card, and it was the first time he had used it. Therefore, the spell that he had completed previously was still the Vulcan's finger. It was just that at the last moment, he had fused a hellfire needle into it. This fusion should not be underestimated. To be able to hide the hellfire needle from the Vulcan's finger and even deceive the Magic Temple's temple master, Chun Hongba, this control of spiritual power could be considered master level. After all, Lin Xian was able to control magic that was beyond his level. Behind Long Haochen was Wang Yuan, followed by Lin Xen, Sima Xian, and Han Yu. The 5 of them, as one, swallowed the conjoined spirit-increasing pill at the same time. Long Haochen himself stood at the thick neck where Hao Yue's 6 heads were connected, while the other 4 formed a line behind him. A strong spiritual wave was transmitted through his arm, and Long Haochen's aura instantly increased by several times. The conjoined spirit increased spiritual power, while the adamant and foundation battle armor also increased spiritual power. What was the difference between the two? The difference was that the conjoined spirit increased the spiritual power output of Long Haochen for 1 attack, while the adamant and foundation battle armor and the Star King increased the spiritual power output of Long Haochen more. The duration of the conjoined spirit increasing was very short, but it could completely raise Long Haochen's attack power to a whole new level. This was also the ultimate strategy that their team used against strong enemies. After evolving into 6 heads, this was the first time Hao Yue had appeared on the battlefield. His 6 heads were raised high in the air, and the wings on his back flapped. As he flew high into the sky, his 6 heads let out an angry roar. Its amethyst-like scales only needed a weak ray of light to produce a wave-like purple halo. Its 6 heads rose up at the same time. Even though it was far inferior to the 4-headed chimera in terms of cultivation and size, the moment Hao Yue appeared, its aura completely overwhelmed Chun Hongba's summoned beasts. Following this roar, a thick layer of purple energy burst forth from Hao Yue's body and spread throughout the Colosseum. At this moment, the 4-headed chimera was originally dealing with the various magical beasts summoned by the Living Soul Gate. However, the instant this purple energy spread, all the magical beasts, including the 4-headed chimera, raised their heads to look in Hao Yue's direction. The fear they felt was even greater than when they were bathed in the Beast King's domain. Even the 4-headed chimera was no exception. In terms of appearance, Hao Yue and the 4-headed chimera were quite similar. They both had many heads, 2 wings, and a body shape that was similar to that of a dragon. The difference was that the 4-headed chimera's head was more like that of a dragon, or in other words, it had the appearance of a dragon, and its scales were thicker. However, in terms of color, it was clear that Hao Yue, whose entire body was glowing with amethyst light, was more dazzling. The moment the Star Jade's gaze focused on Hao Yue's body, this powerful level, 10 magical beasts' gaze immediately froze. It even stopped attacking the magical beasts below it. The huge wings that were originally controlling its body to float in the air started to tremble uncontrollably, to the extent that it could no longer maintain its floating state. With a boom, it directly fell to the ground, crushing a group of low-level magical beasts to death. Chapter 208. Hao Yue didn't even look at the 4-headed chimera. After roaring, he held his 6 heads high, as proud as a king of ants. No one had expected such a situation. Even Long Haochen couldn't help but stare blankly. He had just taken the co-joined spiritual boosting pill with his companions, and was prepared to face Chun Hongba's test in his strongest state. But Chun Hongba's strongest summoned beast suddenly fell to the ground, to the extent that Chun Hongba, who had just dodged the Hellfire Needle, almost fell from its back. This situation was really too strange. After all, they weren't enemies. Long Haochen couldn't take advantage of this opportunity to directly attack Chun Hongba. What's going on? Chun Hongba was even more shocked. Layers of milky white soul waves spread out from his body, covering the four-headed chimera Xingxuan. However, things didn't go as he wished. The boost that had always been successful actually lost its effect at this time. Xingxuan's body trembled more and more obviously. Her foreheads were all pressed against the ground, and white foam even started to appear from her mouth and nose. At this time, Chun Hongba didn't have the time to test Long Haochen and the others. To a summoner, a summoned beast was equivalent to his own life. Once something happened to the summoned beast, the summoner's cultivation would definitely be greatly reduced, and he would also receive a fatal injury. What did you do to Xingxuan? Chun Hongba roared. At this time, he also saw clearly Hao Yue's appearance, and couldn't help but stare blankly. Long Haochen was also greatly astonished when he saw Xingxuan's appearance, because he didn't let Hao Yue attack at all. Moreover, Xingxuan was a magical beast of the 10th rank. How could Hao Yue defeat her so casually? For a moment, he was also confused and didn't understand what was going on. He hurriedly let Hao Yue descend. His figure flashed, and Long Haochen arrived at Chun Hongba's side. And just behind Chun Hongba, Kai Er's figure also quietly appeared. If they were really facing an enemy, then the moment when Chun Hongba shouted at Long Haochen was the best time for her to make a move. Senior, we didn't do anything. They haven't attacked yet. The effect of the co-joined spiritual boosting pill was still there, but because it hadn't been released, Long Haochen's body wasn't feeling well. He was barely suppressing the backlash of the co-joined spiritual boosting pill. He said helplessly to Chun Hongba. Chun Hongba looked at Xing Xian, who couldn't even transmit her thoughts to him. Even with his 9th rank cultivation, he was actually so anxious that his forehead was covered in sweat. You guys didn't do anything? Then how did Xingxuan become like this? Your magical beast, that's your magical beast. Could it be that it's actually a bloodline suppression? After all, he was the temple master of the Soul Temple. Chinning, it was right. In this world, no one knew more about magic beasts than her grandfather. When the words bloodline suppression were mentioned, Chun Hongba's eyes were filled with disbelief. When he looked at Hao Yue again, it was as if he was looking at a ghost, and his body couldn't help but tremble. This is impossible, a six-headed chimera. Chun Hongba looked at Hao Yue with a sluggish expression, his hands and feet turning cold. However, he didn't forget about Xing Xian's crisis, and hurriedly said to Long Haochen, "Quick, return your mount. Quick." The last word was practically roared out, showing how anxious he was at this time. Long Haochen didn't dare delay, and hurriedly turned around, making a gesture to Hao Yue. Hao Yue looked at Xing Xian with some disdain, and its 6 heads once again rose up. With a flash of purple light, it disappeared without a sound. Strangely enough, as soon as it disappeared, Xing Xian's trembling immediately stopped, and she also stopped foaming at the mouth. However, the other magical beasts weren't so lucky. They were all shrouded in that layer of purple light released by Hao Yue, and now they were all paralyzed on the ground, and those with low cultivation died directly. Those with higher cultivation also fell into a state of paralysis, and for a moment, many magical beasts peed and excreted, filling the Colosseum with an unpleasant smell. Hao Yue left, and Chun Hongba was greatly relieved. When he looked at Long Haochen again, his gaze was completely different. It was as if he was looking at a monster. The four-headed chimera, Xing Xian, gradually recovered. After all, it was a magical beast of the 10th rank, and its recovery speed was very fast, and its 4 heads gradually lifted up. However, the fear in its eyes didn't lessen, especially when it looked at Long Haochen. Its huge body took a few steps back, and in a flash of light, it took the initiative to return to the summoning space. It didn't even greet Chun Hongba. "Senior, what the hell is going on?" With great difficulty, Long Haochen managed to suppress the backlash of the co-joined spiritual pills, but at this moment, he was completely confused. How could he not be surprised by such a dramatic ending to what was originally a normal test? Chun Hongba stared firmly at Long Haochen. "How did you get that mount of yours? Tell me quickly." Long Haochen said, "I got it in the night's holy mountain." "Impossible," Chun Hongba said flatly. How could your knight's holy mountain have a six-headed chimera? Do you know what a six-headed chimera means? Long Haochen looked at Chun Hongba in surprise. You mean Hao Yue is a six-headed chimera? Chun Hongba nodded without hesitation. Definitely. Otherwise, how could it produce such a strong bloodline pressure on Xing Xian? Even a magical beast, more powerful than Xing Xian, wouldn't be able to do that. At this time, the others had already gathered around, and even Sanshui Popo and Zhang Fangfang had come down from the stands. Sanshui Popo said, "The so-called bloodline pressure is like this. Magical beasts have their own system, divided into many races. Within each race, there is a strict hierarchy. This is the hierarchy of magical beasts, which is somewhat similar to us humans. Simply speaking, among magical beasts, there are also commoners and nobles. In front of nobles, commoners of the same race will feel great pressure. This is the so-called bloodline pressure of magical beasts. Therefore, when magical beasts of the same race fight, the first thing to compete between them is the nobility of their bloodline. If there's a big difference in bloodline, then under the powerful suppression, the fight is simply impossible. Only when the purity of the bloodline is almost the same can it be possible to take a step closer to the fight. Let me give a simple example. Sanshui Popo pointed at Han Yu's evil eye overlord. This evil eye of yours is of the overlord rank. If there was a tyrant rank evil eye here, its strength would be strongly suppressed. It wouldn't even dare to make a move against the evil eye tyrant." Listening to Sanshui Popo's explanation, everyone finally had some understanding of bloodline pressure. At this time, Chun Hongba's mood had calmed down a lot, and he said in a deep voice, "When Xing Xian saw your six-headed chimera, it was like an ordinary evil eye seeing an evil eye tyrant, which is why it was so unbearable. If the six-headed chimera's aura was suppressed for a long time, it would even endanger its life. Now I finally understand why the demon god Emperor values you so much. You have a god by your side. You have a god with you, enough to threaten the rule of the demons." Long Haochen frowned. "Temple Master Chun, please wait a moment. Why do I feel that something is wrong? Just now, Senior Sanshui said that the evil eye tyrant can suppress the evil eye overlord. This is bloodline pressure. But the premise is that the evil eye tyrant is indeed more powerful than the evil eye overlord. But Hao Yue is different. Hao Yue is at most equivalent to a magical beast of the 9th rank, and it has just advanced. There's a huge gap between it and your six-headed chimera. There is a huge gap between a magical beast of the 9th rank and a magical beast of the 10th rank. How could it suppress your six-headed chimera's bloodline?" "What did you say? 9th rank? Impossible. How could a six-headed chimera be a magical beast of the 9th rank?" Chen Hongba cried out involuntarily. Long Haochen helplessly said, "But that is the truth. Hao Yue is indeed a magical beast of the 9th rank, and it has just finished its evolution. This is something that my companions can confirm." Chen Hongba's expression turned sluggish, his face full of shock. With his knowledge of magical beasts, this situation was already beyond his scope of understanding. Taking a deep breath, he suppressed the shock in his heart. Chen Hongba said, "How about this? I will first tell you the story of the chimera. Then you can tell me the process of forming a contract with this magical beast. If this magical beast of yours is really only at the 9th rank, then it is bound to have an extremely special story. It might even be beyond the scope of a chimera." Sanshui Popo suddenly interrupted Chen Hongba. "What about Ing? How is Inger?" "Long Haochen, where did you take her?" Long Haochen replied, "I transported her to a safe place. That is one of our divine tools, capable of transporting people at any time. She should have overused her mental force and will recover after resting for some time. I can transport her back now." In the end, Sanshui Popo was still worried about Chun Inger and immediately nodded, letting Long Haochen carry out the transport. Amidst the golden fluctuations of the eternal melody, the still unconscious Chun Ing returned in front of everyone. Sanshui Popo hurriedly held her granddaughter in her arms and checked her physical condition. After confirming that she had only fainted due to overexertion of mental force, she relaxed. Then she stuffed a mental force-recovering pill into Chang-Er's mouth. Chun Hongba was currently unable to attend to his granddaughter. He had studied magical beasts all his life, and the sudden appearance of a magical beast he had never seen before, or even imagined, gave him a huge shock. At the same time that Sanshui Popo was treating Channing, he had already started to tell Long Haochen and the others about the origin of the Chimera. The Chimera is a special kind of dragon. In ancient times, the word Chimera referred to a chimera. In other words, originally completely unrelated things were put together to form a new kind of creature. It sounds a bit hard to understand, but the existence of the chimera just so happens to explain this word. In ancient times, the dragon race was prosperous and even ruled the whole continent for a time. At that time, the dragon race was the most tyrannical. But the dragon race was not only greedy, violent, and incomparably lustful. They had a strong desire to possess any kind of creature. Thus, in the suppression of mating, numerous subspecies of dragons were born. For example, the earth dragon that we see now, their ancestors came from this way. The same goes for the chimera, but is the most powerful subspecies of dragons. When the chimera first appeared, it was an extremely rare combination of a poisonous dragon and a dark lizard magical beast. Their descendants mutated and became two-headed dragons with dual attributes of poison and darkness. But this chimera was only slightly stronger than the dark lizards and not as strong as the poisonous dragons, but it had an extremely strong vitality. The poisonous dragon ruled the entire dark lizard race. Perhaps there was a strong compatibility between the bloodlines of the two, but the number of two-headed chimeras was also increasing. After thousands of years of reproduction, under the survival of the fittest, the dark lizard race gradually died out. It wasn't until the death of the poisonous dragon that the chimera race finally took shape. Although these chimeras were not as powerful as their ancestor, the poisonous dragon, they had completely inherited the poisonous dragon's lustfulness. They began to launch aggressive attacks on other races and gradually spread their branches and leaves on the continent. The chimera has a very strong vitality. Therefore, when they reproduce, more of their own bloodline will be passed down. At most, there will be changes in attributes, but there will be very few changes in appearance. It can also be considered one of the famous races of ancient times. Moreover, after continuous evolution, the chimera race gradually gave birth to more powerful existences, and their strength is calculated by the number of heads. Two chimeras, the strongest, can only reach the 9th level of magical beast. The three-headed chimera, on the other hand, can already peak at the edge of the 10th level of magical beast, with strength close to that of a dragon. The four-headed chimera is called the dragon of destruction. They have the blood of the dragon race, but they like to eat dragons the most. Moreover, after reaching 4 heads, the overall strength of the chimera has completely surpassed that of the dragon. Just now, I was afraid of hurting you, so I didn't let Xingxuan go all out. Hearing this, Long Haochen and the others finally had a certain understanding of the chimera. Long Haochen couldn't help but ask, "Senior, what about the 6-headed chimera?" Chun Hongba glanced at Long Haochen and said in a deep voice, "There is such a legend. The 4-headed chimera is known as the Emperor of the Chimera race. So it is also called the Emperor Chimera. The 5-headed chimera that only appears in legends is called a demigod, and is also the totem of the Chimera race. As for the 6 heads, a trace of fear flashed through Chun Hongba's eyes. In the history of the Chimera race, there has never been a 6-headed chimera or more. In the legends, however, the 6-headed chimera is a god, on the same level as the dragon god, the god of destruction, the god of destruction. Therefore, in the ancient legends, the 6-headed chimera is the symbol of destruction and destruction. That is why I was so shocked when I saw your companion mount. If it really is a 6-headed chimera, then the threat it poses to us humans is no less than that of the demons." Long Haochen sucked in a breath of cold air and said in a deep voice, "Senior, are you sure that Hao Yue is a 6-headed chimera?" Chun Hongba said in a bad mood, "Sure my ass. If it was a 6-headed chimera, just now, Star King, and I would have died long ago. With the Chimera's desire to destroy, it will never allow an existence that has violated its dignity for the first time to live. However, I am very suspicious. Even if that magical beast of yours isn't a chimera, it definitely has the bloodline of a chimera, and even evolved a step further to become what it is now. However, if it isn't a pure chimera bloodline, then why would its bloodline produce such a strong pressure on Xingxuan? Haochen, tell me in detail what happened when you were together with it. Long Haochen nodded and narrated in detail how he had arrived at Night's holy mountain, how his search for a magical beast companion was unsuccessful, and how he had finally received Haoyue through the transmission method. When Shun Hongba heard Long Haochen say that he had used his own blood to help Haoyue change her fate, forcibly changing her attribute, he couldn't help but be moved, and the tense expression on his face also relaxed. A few days ago, we had just completed our evolution with Haoyue in her plane and resisted the attacks of the undead creatures of that plane. That's why I told you before that she had just evolved to six-headed. After thinking for a moment, Chen Hongba said, I don't know what kind of existence this mount of yours is. I can't tell. Long Haochen said, You don't know either? Then, could it be related to the Chimera race? Chen Hongba shook his head. It's hard to say. But the most likely situation is that one of the ancestors of the Chimera race of our plane, after reaching a certain level of cultivation, broke through the plane and arrived in that world. Then, under the influence of the various circumstances of that world, it underwent continuous evolution and finally became a powerhouse of its generation. But there are few things that I can be sure of. First of all, this mount of yours is definitely extremely destructive. Its ancestor must have left behind an indelible and terrifying memory for the undead creatures of that world. Otherwise, every time it evolves, it would not attract the attacks of so many undead creatures. Secondly, this magical beast of yours should be very different from the Chimera race. Although it has 6 heads, it is definitely not an Emperor Chimera, a half-mystical Chimera, or even a divine Chimera. That's because its current cultivation is only equivalent to that of a powerhouse of the 8th step. Do you know what this means? Long Haochen shook his head. Chun Hongba said in a deep voice, This means that it is bound to continue evolving, and may even grow a 7th head, or even an 8th. What? Why are you so sure? Long Haochen asked in puzzlement. On the side, Sanshui Popo interjected, Isn't this obvious? What is the most important thing for a magical beast to evolve? It's the bloodline. My old man's 4-headed chimera is a magical beast of the 10th rank, but your magical beast completely suppresses it in terms of bloodline. It would be strange if it couldn't evolve to the 10th rank. In the future, it is bound to be even more powerful than Xingxuan, but it is currently only at the 8th step, so how could it not evolve further? Summoners spent their entire lives dealing with magical beasts, and no one knew the habits of magical beasts better than them. Hearing Sanshui Popo's explanation, Long Haochen immediately understood. Chun Hongba said, Your 6-headed mount may not be a chimera, and each of its heads doesn't seem to be as powerful as a chimera. But to what extent it will grow in the future, I have no way to judge. Moreover, I can be sure that its bloodline is above that of a chimera, and its noble bloodline might even be comparable to that of a dragon god. There are 2 reasons why I can make such a judgment. These 2 reasons are also the difference between your mount and a chimera. Although a chimera can have many heads, in fact, it only has one mind. In other words, no matter how many heads it has, its mind is exactly the same. But your mount is different. You said that each of them has a separate mind, but they share the same body. Even among ancient magical beasts, this kind of existence is rare, and I'm talking about having 2 minds. A magical beast with 6 minds, I don't even dare to think about it. I didn't expect to see one in this life. Secondly, it's their use of attributes. According to what you said, its true strength is much greater than its grade, and this is its advantage in using attributes. Although a chimera also has many attributes, its magic attack ability can only be reflected in its breath. Although its breath can also change into a myriad of forms, it is still different from magic. But this magical beast of yours can chant all kinds of incantations by itself, attacking, defending, and even assisting. With these 2 points combined, its intelligence is bound to be extremely high. Simply speaking, imagine a person with 6 brains to think and judge. To what extent would they be intelligent? Hearing Chun Hongba's words, Long Haochen felt as if he was suddenly enlightened. Although Chun Hongba didn't know what kind of magical beast Haoyue was, he at least told Long Haochen about the possible origins and changes of Haoyue. Lin Xian asked from the side, Temple Master Chun, then according to what you said, if Haoyue has the bloodline of a chimera, then wouldn't it be very dangerous? If it evolves and becomes even more powerful in the future, won't it become even more destructive? Chun Hongba smiled slightly and said, At first, I also had this worry, but later on, it was gone. Because of the way it came to our world. Haochen brought it to this world and used his own blood to change its attributes. Not to mention the favor of saving their lives, this change allowed them to complete the process of forming a blood contract. Moreover, it was a blood contract with Haochen as the master. Do you know what this means? Among us summoners, the ultimate goal of all summoners is not to have a powerful summoned beast, but to have a summoned beast with a blood contract. A blood contract is called a contract that even gods cannot break. As long as the blood contract is completed, it will never disappear until death. Long Haochen and Haoyue's blood contract is with Long Haochen as the master. First of all, the relationship between them is much closer than the relationship between a normal person and their magical beast companion. At the same time, in the process of increasing the cultivation of both parties, there will be a constant mutual enhancement. In other words, whichever one of them increases in strength will cause the other to increase in strength as well. I believe that Long Haochen has already experienced this point. If one day, Long Haochen dies in battle, then Haoyue will definitely die. This is what the blood contract brings. On the other hand, if Haoyue dies in battle, nothing will happen to Long Haochen. If it is not completely subservient to the other party, completely trusting and grateful to the other party, a magical beast will definitely not form a blood contract with a human. Of course, a blood contract also has a certain benefit to the magical beast itself, and that is to increase the speed of their evolution. Therefore, no matter how much Long Haochen's magical beast mount evolves in the future, it will not be able to bring much harm to our world. Taking a step back, if one day it really threatens us humans, as long as Long Haochen dies, it will definitely die too. Chun Hongba said this very calmly, but in the ears of Long Haochen and the others, there was a strange feeling, especially Long Haochen himself. In his mind appeared the image of Haoyue's weak and frightened appearance when she first came to this world, a body that seemed like it could collapse at any time. His eyes gradually became gentler. That's right. No matter how many secrets Haoyue had, she was still his blood contract partner. She had already given everything. As for her abilities, what more did he have to think about? Senior, your test for us. Long Haochen probed. Chun Hongba's face immediately sank. He had been preoccupied with Haoyue's pressure on Xingxuan, so he had already forgotten about this matter. Now that he heard Long Haochen mention it, it would be strange if his face didn't look good. Sanshui Popo unhappily glared at her husband. However, whether it was her or Chun Hongba, they couldn't say that the previous competition didn't count as one more time. Their status was still there. Chun Hongba proposed to let Long Haochen and the others defeat him. This was already bullying the weak. If he went back on his words at this time, where would he put his face? Sigh. With a long sigh, Chun Hongba waved his sleeve. Do as you wish. After saying this, he turned around and left without looking back. Sanshui Popo couldn't help but curse. You useless old thing. Chun Hongba angrily said, I'm useless? Why don't you try? Do you think these little guys are so easy to deal with? Didn't you see that the assassin ran to my side? In fact, if Chun Hongba didn't have the heart to kill Long Haochen and the others, and held back from beginning to end, wanting to defeat Long Haochen and the others really wouldn't have been so easy, especially after his life-bound summoned beast was restrained by Haoyue. However, Although Chun Hongba and Sanshui Popo were gloomy, they were more shocked than gloomy. To be able to become titled monster hunters, they really had a lot of real abilities. Sanshui Popo carried Chuning, and walked in front of Long Haochen, saying in a deep voice, Long Haochen, remember this, as long as Ing is in your team, no matter what decision you make in the future, our soul temple will support you. If something happens to Ing, no matter what the reason is, our soul temple will treat you as a mortal enemy, even if you become the leader of the alliance in the future. After saying this, she handed Chuning, over to Wang Yuan, before turning around and leaving. Kai stood at Long Haochen's side, muttering, this one is really unreasonable. Lin Xian laughed mischievously. If Sanshui Popo were to be reasonable, she wouldn't be Sanshui Popo. This one always keeps her word. Sima Xian said, Boss, we seem to have one. Shouldn't we be able to cheer? That's right. Passing Chun Hongba's test meant that their team's reorganization was complete, and the bright glimmer of hope monster hunters could once again begin their mission journey. In the next instant, deafening cheers resounded in the Soul Temple's Colosseum. Night fell. After dinner, Long Haochen returned to his room early. After going through the test in the morning, he went to the Yi Chamber of Commerce in the afternoon. So far, there was still no news. They could only keep waiting. Without accurate information, acting rashly wouldn't lead to any results. At the same time, he asked the Soul Temple to send a message to the Alliance, informing them that Alliance leader Yang Haoen's team had finished reuniting, requesting the Alliance to issue a mission. The last time they completed a mission was already 2 years ago. Whether it was Long Haochen or his comrades, they all felt impatient. Maybe it wasn't really for the sake of completing a mission, but for the sake of getting back that feeling of teamwork. Since the start of the Holy War 2 years ago, the demons' all-out attack had caused huge losses to the Temple League. But at the same time, in this Holy War, the demons had also suffered huge losses. In terms of high-end strength, the losses on both sides couldn't be considered too great, but the middle and low-end strength had been sharply declining. This Holy War was very difficult for humanity, but in the midst of the difficulties, humanity also saw a glimmer of light, the dawn of victory. After all, humanity still managed to hold on. Even the Southern Mountains Pass, which had the weakest defense, didn't really allow the demons to break through. Holding on was a kind of victory for the Temple League, strengthening their confidence in defeating the demons. What did the demons have? Apart from the ability to reproduce and a powerful race's inheritance, they didn't have much else. And what humanity had accumulated over the past 6,000 years in the Age of Darkness, how could this holy war exhaust all of it? In terms of recovery speed, humanity didn't think that they were inferior to the demons. Thus, in the upper echelons of the Temple League, there was a fundamental change in strategy and tactics. Of course, humanity wouldn't counterattack now, but they paid more attention to preserving their strength. At the same time, they were accelerating the cultivation of all their reserve forces. This holy war had tested the true strength of the Temple League, and at the same time provided them with valuable experience and a deeper understanding of the demons. The gap still existed, but it wasn't impossible to close, right? Hao Yue had evolved once again. The purple color released from her body should be the power of her bloodline that Chun Hongba spoke of. After evolving, Hao Yue would definitely have an easier time destroying the demon god pillars. If they could destroy a few more demon god pillars in the demon's territory, they would achieve a milestone every time. Long Haochen had already set a goal for himself 2 years ago when he started his seclusion, which was to destroy as many demon god pillars as possible in his remaining years and shake the foundation of the demons. The demons were so powerful, and he didn't think that he could completely destroy the demons. But as long as he could weaken the demon's strength as much as possible, there would be a day when humanity would emerge victorious. Bang, bang, bang. Just as Long Haochen was thinking about the path bright glimmer of hope would take in the future, someone knocked on the door. Opening the door, he saw Kai, standing outside in a charming manner. Kai, come in quickly. Long Haochen let her in. Just as he raised his hand to close the door, Kai, suddenly pounced on him from behind and hugged his waist, pressing herself tightly against Long Houchen's back. Long Houchen could sense that her mood was very unstable, and he could even feel a moist liquid seeping into his clothes. For a moment, he couldn't help but be shocked. "Kyra, what's wrong with you?" Turning around, Long Houchen pulled her into his embrace. Right now, Kyra was wearing a long black dress, which formed a stark contrast with her snow-white skin. 2 years had passed, and Kyra had also grown up. Her figure had grown even taller, but her soft, cotton-like feeling hadn't changed in the slightest. Holding her in his arms, the feeling of being completely integrated with her body was just too wonderful. Her slender waist and the warmth of her body immediately made Long Houchen restless. They had both grown up and were no longer in love with each other like they were in their youth. Under physical contact, it was hard to avoid a strong physiological reaction. Long Houchen felt his hands tremble and couldn't help but recall the scene of Kai-Er's naked body in the illusory shrine. For a moment, he felt his heart burning. His shoulders were burdened with too many things, and only when he was alone with Kai-Er could his heart relax a little. "Houchen!" Kai-Er raised her head, and her pair of slender arms wrapped around Long Houchen's neck like water snakes, actually taking the initiative to deliver her red lips. She was the only love in his heart. In front of such a temptation, how could Long Houchen restrain himself? For lips met, and the immaturity and awkwardness blended together. Kai-Er's lips were very cold and were still trembling, but her movements were very intense. She tightly hugged Long Houchen's neck, as if she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold on to him. The coldness gradually turned into heat, and his breathing became more and more hurried. Pieces of clothing fell to the ground, and the moment the two fell onto the bed, Kai couldn't help but let out a soft groan. Their primitive instincts urged them to search for the origin of life. Finally, at the instant the scorching heat found its warmth, Kyra's body abruptly went taut. "No, don't," she suddenly shouted without regard for anything else. Long Houchen's originally heavy breathing suddenly stopped, and he was suddenly awakened by Kai-Er's sudden high-pitched voice. His dazed eyes became a little clearer. Kyra desperately squeezed out from under him, hugged the quilt on the bed, and burst into tears. The fire of desire gradually faded, and Long Houchen was completely shocked by the scene in front of him. When Kai entered the room, she seemed a little abnormal, but soon the two of them fell into lust. But at this moment, her change filled Long Houchen's heart with shock and panic. Kyra, what's wrong with you?" Long Houchen hurried forward, but didn't dare to touch her again. Sweat slid down his forehead. "It's all my fault, I shouldn't have. It's my fault. Don't be angry, okay? What's wrong with you?" Kyra shook her head hard, and because of the shaking, tears came out. "No, it's not your fault, it's my fault, I can't. As she said this, she turned around, hugged Long Houchen, and burst into tears. Even when facing the demon god, Long Houchen wouldn't be as helpless as he was now. He loved Kai-Er very much, and when he saw her in such pain, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Moreover, he didn't know why Kai-Er was like this. Chapter 209. After a long time, Kai-Er's emotions gradually calmed down, and only faint sobbing sounds could be heard. Long Houchen didn't even dare to ask or look at Kai-Er too much because they didn't have anything to cover their bodies. In order to reduce her temptation, he had to wrap Kai-Er's body with a blanket and softly comforted her. Slowly raising her head, Kai-Er looked at Long Houchen with teary eyes. "I'm sorry, Houchen. I can't." Long Houchen hurriedly shook his head. It's okay. I was too anxious." Raising her hand to wipe the sweat from Long Houchen's forehead, Kai-Er tightly nestled in his arms. "It's my fault. I'm too afraid of losing you." Seeing that her emotions were still stable, Long Houchen asked tentatively, "Kai-Er, what's wrong?" He didn't believe that Kai-Er was crying because they were too intimate. Kai-Er lowered her head. "Ever since I lost my memory, I felt that there should be another person in my body. And the one you like isn't me. It's the other me with the memories of the past. Today, when we were facing Grandpa Er's test, This feeling was especially obvious. Everyone was reporting to you, raising their morale. I could feel the persistence and nostalgia of the past in their hearts. But I don't have that memory, I don't. At that moment, I only felt that I was an outsider. I'm no longer the Kyer in your heart, right? But now, I've also fallen in love with you. Do you know? Right now, I want to recover my memory, but I'm especially afraid of recovering it. If I can't recover my memory, I can't be sure of your feelings for me. However, if I recover my memory, will I disappear from this world? Will I never come back? So I'm very afraid. I really don't like this feeling. I'm afraid that I'll lose you forever. So I came to find you. I want to give you my most precious thing. However, just now, I suddenly felt that all of this was not mine, but the other her in my memory. So I can't give it to you. I can't. Listening to her sobbing voice, Long Houchen fell silent. He asked himself, in his heart, did he like the Kyer in front of him? Just as Kyer had said, ever since she lost her memory, his feelings towards her had changed. Her memory had yet to recover, and only Long Houchen herself knew the kind of melancholy that filled her heart. However, his thoughts were different from Kyer's. Whether it was before or after losing her memory, Kyer was still Kyer. It was just that her memories were divided into two parts. Therefore, he had been waiting patiently. Previously, when Kyer took the initiative to be intimate with him, he did not reject her, because no matter what, she was his Kyer. Gently stroking her somewhat messy long hair, Long Houchen whispered, "Fool, you're really a fool. Why would you think so? I love Kyer. Kyer's everything. It's your body, every strand of your hair, and even every drop of sweat. Whether it was before or after losing her memory, you're still you. You're still my Kyer. What you've lost is just your memory. You don't need to worry about losing your current self after recovering your previous memory. Because the memory will only merge, it's impossible to replace or erase." Listening to Long Houchen's words, Kyer's excited emotions gradually calmed down. Although she didn't speak in his arms, at least her trembling decreased a lot. "Kyer, do you know? I'm actually very lucky. Much luckier than ordinary couples." At this point, Long Houchen paused and deliberately kept her in suspense. Sure enough, his words aroused Kyer's curiosity. She raised her head and looked at him with her beautiful eyes that were red and swollen from crying. "Why?" Long Houchen kissed her forehead and said with a smile, "Because my lover has loved me twice. Think about it. If you recover your memory in the future and your love for me fuses together, won't you love me even more? How lucky am I to have such an experience? So, you don't need to worry about anything. Whether it's the you in the past or the you now, I will love you unreservedly. I won't hide it from you. In my heart, I still hope that you can recover your previous memory, because I hope that you can remember the happiness we had in the past. But I will never force you to recover your memory. We'll just let nature take its course. No matter what, no matter when, you don't need to worry about losing me. As long as I'm still alive, my feelings will only belong to you. Even if I die in the next life, it will still be yours. When I was young, I didn't understand what love was, but now I understand. Love is caring, missing, spoiling, watching, hugging, kissing, and being willing to do everything for you. I love you. I love you in all kinds of ways. I will never differentiate you because you lost your memory. Your memory loss will only make my heart ache, make me pity you even more, love you even more because I didn't protect you well." Long Houchen, Kyer screamed and struggled out of the quilt. She threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. Tears gushed out again, but this time it was not pain but happiness. Early in the morning, when Long Houchen appeared in front of his companions with 2 dark circles under his eyes, except for Kyer, who was nowhere to be seen, almost everyone was snickering. They live very close to the Soul Temple. As long as one wasn't deaf, they could hear Kyer's scream yesterday. In addition, Kyer didn't return to her room last night, so it was easy to imagine what they were doing. On the surface, Long Houchen acted as if nothing had happened, but he knew that he was in pain. Last night, for him, could no longer be simply described as torture. After Kyer shed tears of happiness, she quickly fell asleep in his embrace. Moreover, He hugged her very tightly, very tightly. In order to let her have a good rest, Long Hao-chen didn't want to wake her up. In his arms was his one and only love, and there was no barrier between them because of clothes. Someone was just over 20 years old, and the strength of his vitality was comparable to the purity of his light element. The result was predictable. The flag of the Glimmer of Dawn Monster Hunters was erected for a whole night. Fortunately, his body was strong enough to not die because of excessive blood congestion. When Kyer woke up in the morning, she immediately ran away when she saw the situation. The pitiful Xiaolong, who had always been kind, didn't even know how to be a lady. He took a cold shower for a quarter of an hour before he came out. It would be strange if he looked good. I'll go to Yuye's Chamber of Commerce to ask for more information. Long Hao-chen couldn't stand everyone's suggestive gazes and ran away. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he heard a burst of laughter behind him. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He thought to himself that if he had the chance again, he would definitely eat up Kyer. Demonic City, Demonic Moon Palace. He actually appeared. Yi stared blankly at the letter in her hand. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in her heart, and her delicate body trembled slightly. Ever since she had forcibly annulled the marriage between her and Pa, she had been living in the Moon Devil Palace, never leaving the palace. She didn't step out of the door and focused on cultivation. Yu was an extremely intelligent girl. She knew very well what kind of personality Ibao had. If she rejected his marriage proposal, he might really do something extreme. What if he forced her outside? What was done was done. Would she still be able to not marry him? But no matter how powerful Ibao was, he wouldn't dare to cause trouble in the demonic Moon Palace. The Moon Demon God Agar's was ranked second among the 72 Demon God Pillars. This wasn't just a simple ranking. The Moon Demon Clan had as many experts as there were clouds in the sky, and even the Demon God Emperor was very close to Agar's. However, staying in the demonic Moon Palace didn't mean that Yi was ignorant of the outside world. The Yuye's Chamber of Commerce that she had established was now the largest free trade group between the demons and the Temple League. After the Holy War began, the profits of the free trade groups plummeted, but it didn't mean that they didn't have any. They had gradually changed from trading goods to trading all sorts of strategic information. Moreover, the free trade groups profited for both sides. Under Yuye's command, they operated very well. They only sold some unimportant strategic information to both sides, allowing the Yuye's Chamber of Commerce to survive very well between the humans and the demons. As for wealth, with so many years of savings, it was enough to support the consumption of the Holy War for the next few years. The Holy War couldn't go on forever. After the Holy War ended, her free trade groups could still continue to operate. Maybe when both sides were short of resources, she could even make a fortune. Yu had her own special means of communication. In order to get accurate information as soon as possible, she had put in a lot of effort in this aspect. Through a special sound transmission crystal, many magic sound platforms were built on the continent to receive and release information. Therefore, she would only need 2 or 3 days at most to know what happened on the Temple League side. It was also convenient for her to issue orders as soon as possible. Now, the Yuye's Chamber of Commerce had become the largest information trafficker between the demons and the Temple League. In terms of information gathering ability, Yuyi, a girl who seemed to be the Moon Demon's princess, was worthy of being the #1 person on the continent. Therefore, Long Hao-chen found the Yuye's Chamber of Commerce to investigate news of Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi. He had found the right person. The token that Yi gave to Long Hao-chen was special. She had already issued a strict order that no matter where the token appeared, she had to get the news as soon as possible. Wasn't this the case now? The token appeared in the Spirit Temple's Wanshou Pass and asked to investigate news of Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi. He was really in the Temple League. He really appeared. Even Yi herself didn't know whether Long Hao-chen's appearance brought her excitement or anxiety. In fact, she wasn't very familiar with Long Hao-chen, but she was completely sure of Long Hao-chen's amazing talent. This fool. The Holy War is coming to an end. Can't he continue to hide? Doesn't he know the meaning of accumulation? A ball of dark purple light lit up in Yuye's hand and melted the letter. Even Yuye didn't know what kind of feeling she had for Long Hao-chen. How could she not understand that there was no possibility of feelings between her and Long Houchin? However, Long Houchin's figure was so clear in her heart. She didn't know how many times she had tried to forget him. She was even prepared to marry a Bao. However, ever since that incident, her state of mind had completely changed. A Bao led the demon hunters to besiege Long Houchin and Kair. In order to kill Long Houchin and Kair, a Bao finally chose to abandon her and his fiancée. On the contrary, Long Houchin almost sacrificed his life to save Kair. When she saw Long Houchin use his body as a shield to block the attacks of the demons for Kair, Yuye's heart felt as if it was pierced by countless icicles. Two men who were equally outstanding. One represented darkness, and the other represented light. One was her fiancé, and the other was her partner. Why was there such a huge difference between them? Perhaps this was the difference between light and darkness. The dark ones could give up everything for benefits. In their hearts, only benefits were eternal. The light ones might be stupid. For the sake of their lover, they would even sacrifice their lives. However, as a girl, a sensitive girl, it was obvious how she would choose. Yi was completely sure that if Long Houchin didn't have Kair by his side, he would definitely have a fatal attraction to her. If he liked her, she would definitely be with him at all costs. However, all of this was just a fantasy. It was precisely because she knew that it was impossible that the pain in Yu Ye's heart was even more intense. Why am I not the one with him? This fool, he appeared at this time to inquire about the other two demon hunters. This meant that he must reappear on the battlefield with the demons. However, he was already targeted by His Majesty, the Demon Emperor. Would His Majesty let him go? At the thought of the Demon Emperor, Yu Yi couldn't help but shiver. She was the most beloved daughter of the moon demon, Agars. She was very clear about how powerful her father's cultivation was. Her father's power was like the supreme sun in her heart. However, whenever the moon demon, Agars, mentioned the demon emperor, that overflowing fear and respect made Yu Ye's heart turn cold. She didn't know how powerful the demon emperor was, but she could make a comparison. Comparing Long Houchin and the demon emperor was like comparing an ant to a mammoth. Once he was found by His Majesty, the demon emperor, then, no, I must find a way to tell him not to let him enter the demon's territory. Your Highness, Lord Moon Demon wants to see you. At this moment, the maid's voice sounded. Yu Yi was stunned. Only then did she remember that her father seemed to have something important to discuss with her today. Moon Demon Palace. The Moon Demon, Agars, stood quietly in front of his demon throne. His long purple hair was scattered behind him. If it weren't for the vicissitudes and wisdom in his eyes, with his handsome appearance, it would be easy to mistake him for a young man. Father, Yu Ye's voice sounded outside the palace. Come in. The expression on the moon demon's face softened a little. He really couldn't do anything about this daughter of his. His precious daughter was probably the first demons who dared to disobey the orders of the demon emperor. Moreover, she refused the marriage of the demons. The demon emperor didn't pursue this matter. Even a Bao didn't pursue it. It seemed that this matter was left unsettled. Agars, of course, didn't think that this matter could affect the demon emperor's attitude toward him, but it wasn't a good thing. After all, a Bao would be the next demon emperor. If they could unite by marriage, the status of the moon demons would be further consolidated. Yu Yi walked in from outside. Compared to 2 years ago, she was now more mature. Her tall figure had perfect proportions, and her figure had become more voluptuous. Coupled with her mesmerizing purple eyes, even the most picky moon demon, Agars, couldn't help but admire his daughter's beauty in his heart. Compared to ordinary moon demons, Yu Yi, who was a mixed blood of humans and demons, had less dark temperament and more human gentleness, which made her more attractive. Father, you said that you have something important to discuss with me. If it's related to Brother Bao, you don't have to say it. Yu Yi walked to the center of the Moon Demon Palace and said immediately before she stood still. In the past 2 years, the Moon Demon didn't know how many times he had tried to persuade her. Agar said helplessly, You little girl, don't you know how to think about our people? Yu Yi raised her head and looked at her father with a burning gaze, but she didn't say anything. Agar sighed and said, Well, I won't try to persuade you anymore. Things are already like this. I'm looking for you for another matter. Hearing that her father wasn't trying to persuade her to reconcile, with a bow, Yu Ye's expression softened. Go ahead. Agar's expression changed, and he said in a deep voice, you should know the cause of this holy war. You've seen that person before. Yu Yi was shocked. She was still thinking about Long Haochen, and she just got news about him. Why did her father ask her to come? Did her father already know that she was in contact with him? For a moment, her face turned pale. Agar said softly, don't be afraid. Father will protect you and won't let him hurt you again. In his opinion, when Yu Yi was captured by Long Haochen, she was afraid when he mentioned him. Yu Yi hurriedly controlled her emotions. What's wrong with him? Agar said in a deep voice. His Majesty launched a holy war for this human. Although this is to weaken the human race, it also shows how great a threat this person poses to us. Why I told you today, you must strictly keep it a secret. Don't spread it. Understand? Yu Yi nodded quickly and asked curiously, Father, I don't understand. Although Long Haochen is outstanding, he is still a human. What threat can he pose to us? Does His Majesty need to be afraid of him with his cultivation? Agar said in a deep voice, because he threatens the foundation of our race. His own strength is nothing, but he has a mount that is a threat to us. You don't need to know the specifics of that mount. I know that you have established a huge intelligence network between our race and the Temple League through the Wandering Merchant Group. I need your information. Information about that person. Hasn't he disappeared? Yu Ye's heartbeat sped up. Although she vaguely felt that the situation before her eyes was just a coincidence, she had just received information about Long Haochen. How could she not be nervous? Disappeared? It was just hiding within the Human Temple Alliance and refused to come out. Your third uncle used the Great Prophecy spell before the Holy War for him. Through the Great Prophecy spell, he predicted that Long Haochen will re-enter the territory of our demons in the near future and will head towards the direction of the Human Exorcism Pass. But he couldn't predict the exact time, so he needs your Wandering Merchant Group to provide the most accurate information. His Majesty has already laid out an inescapable net and will personally deal with him to stabilize our race's 10,000 years of foundation. Hearing Agar's words, Yu Yi couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. For a moment, she was overwhelmed with emotions and almost couldn't control herself. For Long Haochen, the Demon Emperor is actually going to personally take action. Heavens! Star Demon Vasak is actually going to use the Great Prophecy spell for him. In addition to her father's request, the top 3 demon gods of the demons are actually going to jointly deal with him. What virtue and ability does he have? Isn't this certain death? For a moment, Yu Yi was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Seeing her expression, Agar's frowned and said, Girl, are you seriously listening to Father? I am. Yu Yi hurriedly adjusted her mood and murmured, Father, I just think, is it worth it for him? Even His Majesty is going to personally take action. Agar snorted and said, You don't need to know too much about this. This is an important secret of us demons. You should know, in order to predict this kid's future and the future of us demons, your third uncle used the Great Prophecy spell with all his strength and suffered heavy damage. Now he is still in a state of seclusion to recuperate, and the situation is very bad. At least 80% of his strength has been lost. Otherwise, even with his ability, it would be impossible for him to predict the time so accurately. Therefore, your intelligence must be activated immediately. There must be no mistakes. Do you understand? Once this matter is done, Father will report to His Majesty for your merit. I believe that the matter of you refusing the marriage before can be covered up. Yes, I will definitely do my best to obtain information. Yu Yi lowered her head so that the moon demon couldn't see the panic in her eyes. Agar said, Go. Your information must be sent as soon as possible. Tomorrow, His Majesty and all the demon gods stationed in Demon City will set off for the Exorcist Mountain Pass and set up an inescapable net. This time, we can't let that kid escape. Yes. Forcibly restraining her surging emotions, Yu Yi carefully withdrew from her father's chamber. Just as she left, she almost couldn't help but run back to her residence. She didn't have any other thoughts. She just wanted to tell Long Houchin this information as soon as possible. Even she didn't understand why she was so impulsive. After returning to her residence, just as she was about to send the information as fast as possible, she suddenly received a message from Yu Yi Chamber of Commerce's Myriad Beast Pass. When she saw the message, she couldn't help but feel as if she was struck by lightning. Yu Yi Chamber of Commerce had provided accurate information that Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi were imprisoned in the demon camp outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Long Houchin had already taken the information and left. Long Houchin didn't expect that he would awkwardly go to Yu Yi Chamber of Commerce and obtain accurate information. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi were still alive and had been escorted to the Exorcist Mountain Pass by the demon god who had captured them. From the looks of it, they were preparing to make some transactions with the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The demons were very clear about the status of the demon hunters in the Temple League, and it wasn't as if they hadn't exchanged anything with humans before. At present, the most likely thing they wanted to exchange was the demon god's crown. After all, not long ago, 2 demon gods had perished in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. If they couldn't get back the demon god's crown, then these 2 demon gods wouldn't appear for at least 10 years. For the demons, this would be a huge loss. After obtaining accurate information, Long Houchin immediately returned to the Soul Temple. After bidding farewell to Palace Master Chen Hongba, the party of 8 immediately set off, rushing to the Exorcist Mountain Pass at full speed. The longer they delayed, the more danger Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi would be in. Moreover, in the hands of the hero Shang Yu, there was indeed a demon god's crown. If they returned the demon god's crown to the demons, it wouldn't be a good thing. No matter what, they had to think of a way to rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi. This was something they had to do. The distance from a Myriad Beast Pass to the Exorcist Mountain Pass was equivalent to crossing more than half of the Temple League, so they didn't need to conceal themselves in the Alliance's territory. Long Houchin brought Kai to ride on Star King, while the other 6 relied on their spiritual wings to fly at full speed. After leaving the Myriad Beast Pass, Chuning became a lot quieter. To Long Houchin, the only good news was that Kai's mood was a lot better. Every time their gazes met, the tenderness and love in her eyes would unconsciously leak out. However, Kai also quietly told Long Houchin that she would work even harder to get back her memories. She would definitely give a complete version of herself to Long Houchin. The unspoken meaning was that before she got back her memories, a situation like that night couldn't happen again. From the time Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi met to the time they set off on the Exorcist Mountain Pass, they had already wasted 3 days. And the demon god of the demons had a follower, so the speed at which they rushed to the Exorcist Mountain Pass shouldn't be too fast. To Long Houchin and the others, the best situation was to rush at full speed and do their best to intercept them before they reached the Exorcist Mountain Pass demon camp. In this way, the possibility of rescuing Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi would be much higher. Of course, even if they could successfully intercept them, they still had to face a severe test, and that was whether they could defeat the demon god ranked in the top 36. Because the assassin who came back to report didn't clearly say who the demon god was, they didn't even know what the opponent's situation was. According to Long Houchin's deduction, although the demon god was ranked in the top 36, it shouldn't be too high, and the possibility of him entering the top 24 was very low. But even so, the opponent they had to face was definitely a demon god who already had a domain. With their current strength, the possibility of winning against such a demon god wasn't high. Fortunately, their goal wasn't to kill the demon god, but more importantly, to save Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi. Choosing the shortest distance possible to fly at full speed, Long Houchin and his companions used a full 7 days and 7 nights to reach the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Not bothering to enter the Exorcist Mountain Pass to report to hero Shang Yu, they directly flew to a high peak of the Exorcist Mountain range, overlooking the distant demon camp. After flying for 7 days and nights, with no more than 6 hours of rest every day, everyone was already very tired, and this was under the situation where they took turns resting on the Star King. The mountain wind was biting cold, blowing clouds that constantly battered their bodies. The moist water vapor was somewhat cold, making everyone's mind sober. Long Haochin raised his hand and released a holy light barrier, completely isolating the outside wind. Bathing in a holy light barrier, everyone's physical strength recovered faster. Spreading out the map, everyone sat in a circle. Long Haochin pointed at the map and said, "At present, we are in this position. Going down from the northern mountain range is the Exorcist Mountain Pass. When the air is clean, we can directly overlook the demon camp from here. With our speed, it should be enough to surpass the demon god rushing to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Although we don't know his exact speed, as long as he brings his followers, it will take at least half a month to reach the Exorcist Mountain Pass." Chun Inger said, "Then should we prepare to intercept him? But the biggest problem now is that we don't know which direction he will enter the demon camp. And our position to intercept him must be far enough from the demon camp. Otherwise, if he receives help from the demon god in the demon camp, we will be in danger." Long Haochin said, "Yes, this is the biggest problem we are facing now. Therefore, we must think of a way to investigate the position of the demon god. But at least we have a general direction. Whether it is us or the demons, when hurrying on the road, we will certainly choose the closest way to our destination. Therefore, the general position of the demon god shouldn't be too far off. But the further we are from the demon camp, the greater the possibility of deviation in this position. Kair, the matter of finding the demon god's tracks will be handed over to you. Hanyu, you let the evil eye coordinate with Kair. Set out now, and if there is any news, send it back immediately. Kair, remember, we will enter the demon's territory in a moment and rest 100 li south of the demon camp. We will wait for you there." "Good. I will go now." Kair nodded and quickly left with the evil eye overlord summoned by Hanyu. Among them, those who had the ability to hide from the enemy's eagle eye magic were Long Haochin, Kair, Lin Xian, and Chen. Among them, Long Haochin, Lin Xian, and Chun Ing relied on their outstanding spiritual force to conceal themselves, while Kair had the ability to turn invisible. The others had to use some magic equipment to conceal themselves. Whether it was speed or ability to conceal herself, Kair was the best among them. In addition, there was the evil eye overlord that could cast a wide range of spiritual investigation. She was the most suitable candidate to be the scout. Kair left, and Long Haochin said to everyone, "Everyone rest here and recover your physical and mental strength as soon as possible. I will go to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. If the demon god has already rushed here, then he will certainly raise conditions to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Otherwise, there is no need for him to leave Duan, Yi, and Yang Wenjiao alive. I will go to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to confirm whether he has already arrived or not." Although the possibility of the demon god arriving at the demon camp was very low, for safety's sake, Long Haochin still had to make this trip. After dividing the work, Long Haochin immediately got up and rode the Star King straight to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The others rested and reorganized, each doing their best to recover from their exhaustion. This was their first time working together after 2 years. Even Chun Ing-er, who was extremely worried about Yang Wenjiao's safety, felt a kind of excitement in her heart. When Long Haochin's figure gradually disappeared from their line of sight, they all had the same feeling, as if by prior agreement, that having their captain here was really good. With him, it was equivalent to having a backbone. What they had to do was to follow Long Haochin's instructions. After not seeing each other for 2 years, each of their strength had made a qualitative leap. The only thing that didn't change was the trust and tacit understanding between each other. Long Haochin's departure took a lot longer than they had imagined. After more than 2 hours, when everyone was somewhat anxious, the Star King's figure reappeared in their line of sight. Without waiting for the Star King to land, Long Haochin had already soared from its back and landed in front of his companions. From his solemn expression, everyone knew that something must have happened. "What's wrong, boss?" did Wen Zhao and the others. When she asked this, Chunning Er's voice trembled. What she was most afraid of was hearing the news that Yang Wenjiao and Duan he had already been killed. Long Haochen shook his head and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry. It's fine. Nothing happened to Wenjiao and the others. It's related to us." Ah. Chening stared blankly for a moment. The others were also confused. How come they had just arrived at the Exorcist Mountain Pass and already encountered something related to them? Long Haochen took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm his mood. "I just saw Hero Shengyu and asked about the situation we wanted to know. That demon god shouldn't have reached the Exorcist Mountain Pass yet. At least, the Exorcist Mountain Pass hasn't received any news yet." No one interrupted, because they all knew that Long Haochen's grave expression clearly wasn't because of this matter. With his calm temperament, for him to have such an unstable mood, something big must have happened. Looking at his companion's nervous expressions, Long Haochen's expression slightly relaxed. "Speaking of which, I don't know if this matter is good or bad for us. From a certain point of view, it should be good. But I'm worried that the Exorcist Mountain Pass will suffer a devastating disaster because of us. When I saw Hero Shengyu, he unexpectedly said he was looking for me, for a confidential letter had been received addressed to me. The person who delivered the letter also told Hero Shengyu that I will definitely arrive at the Exorcist Mountain Pass soon, and that he must give me the letter. This matter is related to life and death." Hearing this, Sima Xian couldn't help but ask, "Boss, what was written in the letter?" Long Haochen said, "The content of the letter is very simple. He wanted me to go to the Yuyi Chamber of Commerce. It was because of this trip that I came back a bit late. But I obtained an important piece of information related to our life and death." Everyone's expression suddenly became grave. Even Long Haochen said that this was a piece of information related to their life and death. It could be seen how important this information was. Chapter 210. Long Haochen said, "The news came from Yuyi. When we were still in Wanshou Pass, she learned of our position through Yuyi Chamber of Commerce. Not long after that, she suddenly received a summons from Moon Demon Agars. Agars asked her to mobilize Yuyi Chamber of Commerce's intelligence agency to find our position. He also told her that in order to kill me, Star Demon Vasak made a heaven-defying prophecy before the start of the Holy War. He predicted that we would go to the Exorcist Mountain Pass at this time. He just didn't know the specific time. Now, Demon Emperor Feng Xiao and Moon Demon Agars have already led all the demon gods of Demonic City, except for Star Demon Vasak, who was seriously injured by the Great Prophecy technique, to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. They want to lay an inescapable net to kill me." The Glimmer of Dawn monster hunters all sucked in a breath of cold air. They weren't afraid, but shocked. Extremely shocked. It had already been 2 years since the start of the Sacred War, but from start to finish, the Demon God Emperor and his heaven-defying Devil Dragon clan, as well as the Moon Demon God and the Star Demon God and their clans, had never appeared on the battlefield of the Sacred War. But at this moment, Long Haochen suddenly told them that in order to deal with them, Demon Emperor had already set out. Moreover, he had brought nearly all the elites of Demonic City. There were no less than 10 demon gods in Demonic City, and under the leadership of the Demon God Emperor, as well as his heaven-defying Demon Dragon clan and Moon Demon clan's experts, this terrifying force was enough to instantly destroy the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Moreover, the demons had so many troops on the front lines. Once the Demon Emperor arrived, the Exorcist Mountain Pass would inevitably fall. But this force wasn't aimed at the Exorcist Mountain Pass, but specifically at them. One could imagine how much importance the Demon Emperor attached to Long Haochen. Raising his head and looking into the distance, Long Haochen had a strange expression in his eyes. He was the only one who had read Yu Ye's letter. Although it was just words, Long Haochen could deeply feel Yu Ye's concern for him and her eagerness when she wrote the letter. In the end, this letter was delivered to him in a timely manner. If he had not made a trip to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to play it safe, perhaps he would have really fallen into the inescapable net of the demons. "Boss, what should we do?" Lin Xian asked. Long Haochen took a deep breath and said, "Everyone, don't panic. I've thought about it for a long time on the way back. The strength of the Demon Emperor is not something we can contend against, nor is it something the Exorcist Mountain Pass can contend against. However, we are not at a complete disadvantage. Now that things have reached this stage, even if we immediately notify the Sanctuary Alliance for reinforcements, it will be too late. The Demon Emperor and the Moon Demon have already set out for at least 6 days, leading so many demon gods and heaven-defying Devil Dragon Clan experts. Although the distance between Demon City and the Exorcist Mountain Pass is very far, but with their cultivation, they will arrive here in at most 2 to 3 days. Yuye's news is too important to us. For us, the best way is to immediately escape far away from here. Looking at the current situation of the Holy War, there must be a reason why the Demon Emperor has not taken action. He seems to be afraid of something, or perhaps he himself is unwilling to destroy us humans. And if he joins the battlefield, the Sanctuary Alliance will certainly have a way to deal with him. Only, the Exorcist Mountain Pass is very likely to suffer the Demon Emperor's wrath because he did not catch us. But there is also a possibility that the Demon Emperor will leave. But what about Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi? Chening suddenly became somewhat anxious. If they immediately evacuated like what Long Haochen said, then Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi might not have the possibility of saving them. Moreover, when the Demon Emperor arrives outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the demons might not even make a deal with the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Long Haochen said, "Inger, don't be anxious. Let me finish. Star Demon Vasak is indeed formidable. He can actually predict that we will come here through the Great Prophecy technique. Moreover, according to Yuye's news, Vasak even told the Demon Emperor that if we are not eliminated, then in the future, we will inevitably become a great calamity for the demons, and may even overthrow the demons. The Demon God Emperor regards us with such importance. So how could we disappoint his hopes? Therefore, in my next analysis, everything will be done with our safety as the top priority." Chening said, "Boss, other than leaving immediately, do we have any other way? You said it yourself, we only have 2 or 3 days at most. In such a short period of time, the demon god might not even arrive. What else can we do?" Wen Zhao and the others. Wang Yuanyuan hugged Chening and said, "You are confused because you are too concerned. If the leader has no other way, he wouldn't say so much to us and would immediately issue the order to leave. Moreover, Yang Wenjiao is very important to you, but the leader's safety concerns the entire alliance. Inger, you must calm down now." After a moment of silence, Chening looked at Long Haochen with a burning gaze, her pair of big eyes already faintly misty. She took a deep breath and said, "Boss, don't be embarrassed. If it really can't be done, we will leave." When saying this, Chening seemed to have exhausted all the strength in her body, her whole body leaning into Wang Yuanyuan's embrace, her head lowered. They were a team of monster hunters. After receiving Wang Yuanyuan's reminder, Chening, although extremely unwilling in her heart, still calmed down a bit at this time. Moreover, she also deeply understood what it meant for them to rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi. The Demon Emperor would arrive here in less than 3 days. With the Demon Emperor's terrifying strength, as long as they were in this area, it would be impossible to escape the detection of the Demon Emperor's spiritual force. And rescuing Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi required time. Do they have that kind of time? Long Haochen said seriously, "Don't worry. Until the last moment, I will never give up. What we need to analyze now is the feasibility of rescuing Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi." At this point, Long Haochen spread out the map again. "We are here. Kerr has already gone to find the traces of the demon god. With the ability of Kai and the Evil Eye Lord, I believe there will be news back within a day at most. Facing the Demon Emperor, we simply can't compare in terms of strength, but it's not that we don't have any advantages at all. This advantage was established with the help of Yu Yi. Moreover, everyone doesn't need to think too badly of the situation. If the Demon Emperor wants to kill me, then he must first find us, and we won't go head-on with him at all. Although I am very reluctant to borrow the power of the Tower of Eternity, I have to say, in this situation, as long as the Tower of Eternity exists, the possibility of us being caught and killed by the Demon Emperor is very small. Hearing Long Houchen mention the Tower of Eternity, everyone's eyes lit up. That's right. They still have the Tower of Eternity. No matter how strong the Demon Emperor is, it is impossible to break through space to find the other space where the Tower of Eternity is. In a different space, without accurate spiritual coordinates, even God can't find anything. Long Houchen said, "This time, Yu Ye's information came too timely. She bought us enough time. And if we want to rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan, the only possibility is to have a time difference with the Demon Emperor." At this moment, the solemn expression on Long Houchen's face has disappeared, replaced by a kind of golden confidence. In terms of strength, he and the Demon Emperor are not on the same level at all. However, at this moment, his companions clearly have a feeling that they can already compete with the Demon Emperor, although it is a battle of wits and not a battle of courage. But in the Temple League, how many people would dare to do so? To be on the safe side, we will set this time difference to 2 days. In other words, if we can rescue Wenjiao within 2 days and immediately escape far away, the Demon Emperor can't find us. Speaking up to here, he turned to Chun Inger and said seriously, "But, Inger, no matter what we do, we must first consider the worst outcome. If this time Kerr can't find traces of the demon god, then we have no other choice, do you understand?" Tears could no longer be controlled, flowing down her cheeks. Chun Inger fiercely threw herself into Long Houchen's arms and burst into tears. Thank you, boss. Thank you." As the sole saint, the beast deity's favored one, her intelligence and wisdom are not inferior to the other companions. Of course, she understood how much risk Long Houchen has taken to make this decision. It is a race against time with the Demon Emperor. Is this something an ordinary person would dare to do? If it was the leader of another Monster Hunters team, upon receiving such news, I'm afraid he would have already turned around and left. After all, to their Monster Hunters team, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi are outsiders. Long Houchen gently patted Chun Inger's back, smiled, and said, "Don't forget, I am also a knight. And Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi are both rare talents of our Knights Templars. It is my duty to rescue them." Han Yu said, "Leader, what if we successfully rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi? What are we going to do after that?" Long Houchen said without hesitation, "Go deep into the demons." Everyone was shocked when they heard what he said. The Demon Emperor is trying his best to find traces of them, and he actually said to go deep into the demons. Long Houchen nodded and said, "Since the Demon Emperor brought a large number of demon gods to the front line, then the interior of the demons must be very empty, and we can't use our full strength at the border at all. In order to prevent the Demon Emperor from venting his anger on the various strongholds of the Alliance, I can't even let Hao Yue destroy the demon god pillars. But after entering the interior of the demons, we don't have to worry about this at all. The Demon Emperor also doesn't know where we will go. He can't find us here, so he will either stay here or continue to search for us. And at this time, if we enter the interior of the demons as fast as we can, we might have a great harvest. Therefore, regardless of whether we can successfully rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, our next step is to go deep into the interior of the demons. Staying at the border will only bring trouble to the various strongholds." Han Yu said, "Then what if we return to the interior of the Alliance and hide?" Long Houchen sighed and said, "If only it was that easy. Since the Demon Emperor dared to say that he has set up an inescapable net, then who knows how many spies he has set up at the border. We have Yi helping us from the interior of the demons. The Demon Emperor is the Lord of the Demons, and all the information about the demons is in his hands. Does it mean that the interior of the Alliance is definitely clean? Therefore, only by going deep into the demons can we completely make him lose all information about us. On the other hand, if we retreat into the Alliance, then it is very likely that the Demon Emperor will bring a large number of demon gods to forcefully break into the interior of the Alliance to kill us. At that time, it will be a terrible situation. Going deep into the interior of the demons is a way to seek survival in the midst of death. Not only do we have to go deep into the demons, but we also have to let the Demon Emperor know. This way, we can lead him back to the demons and not cause greater losses to the Alliance. Moreover, as long as we have the Tower of Eternity, then we can activate the teleportation ability of the Tower of Eternity to return at any time. At worst, we will be in seclusion for a long time in the Tower of Eternity. I came back late just now because I also want to do another thing. I asked Swordsman Shungyu to provide us with a large amount of food, which is stored in the Eternal Melody. Even if we live in the Tower of Eternity for a year and a half, it will be enough. After listening to his explanation, everyone felt a sense of relief. It seemed that Long Houchen's plan was very dangerous, but in fact, with the Tower of Eternity as a backup, as long as they did not directly encounter the Demon Emperor, there was almost no real danger to speak of. Zhang Fangfang said, Long Houchen, I still have two problems. One is, if we leave, what will we do if the Demon Emperor directly attacks the Exorcist Mountain Pass? The other more important problem is the authenticity of the information that Yu Yi conveyed. If the Demon Emperor attacks the Exorcist Mountain Pass, it is something we cannot stop. But if Yu Ye's information is false, then we will be very passive. Perhaps we will really fall into the Demon Emperor's trap. Long Houchen slightly stared blankly, suddenly feeling a chill run down his spine. That's right. All of his plans were based on the premise that Yu Ye's information was completely accurate. If there was a problem with Yu Ye's information, then all of his plans would be in vain, and he might even be led by the nose by the Demon Emperor. At this time, Lin Xan giggled from the side. Captain Zhang, you are thinking too much. Ever since they fell into desperate straits due to Heavenly Crystal's wrong decision among the demons, Lin Xian had always disliked other people interfering with Long Houchen's decisions. Even if Zhang Fangfang was Wang Yuan's lover, it was still the same. Zhang Fangfang said, This is just my personal opinion. Of course, I'm not too clear on the extent of your cooperation with Yu Yi. I just feel that if there's a problem in this aspect, it will be too dangerous.